No, it's not your fault. She's still in mute mode.
Okay,
Mr. Hill, please wait for a moment. We
thank
still
you.
have to make sure for our system
Okay,
is working.
okay, thank you for explaining. I was a little confused if we were starting yet or not. So fine,
Okay,
thank you.
my pleasure, Mr. Hill. Okay, Mr. Hill, we will start our conference.
All right.
Let me just start. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Excellencies, Honorable Founder IICET, distinguished speaker, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is indeed a great honor and pleasure for us. My name is Evni Ceria, and on behalf of the committee, we would like to welcome to each and all of you for the International Virtual Conference on Education, Science, Technology, and Innovation 2020, or IVCESTI 2020. The honors our invited keynote speaker, Mr. Hilary Hill Finley, as CEOs Hillary and Associates. Welcome, Mr. Hill.
Thank you.
Our panelists, Associate Professor Dr. Asep Bayu Dani Nandianto, STMAINS from Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, and then Dr. Harwati Hashim from University Kebangsaan Malaysia.
Hello, good morning. Thank you.
Among this time, we would like to invite Ms. Yola Eka Putri, SPD, CMNNLP, as the Research and Innovation of IICET to convey an acknowledgement and to officially open for the IVCESTI 2020. Ms. Yola, please welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Shirley. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everybody, distinguished speaker, and all our participants that been through with us through Zoom and YouTube Live. I'm really glad to see all of you here, even though we just seeing each other virtually from our screen to screen, but it's still a wonderful thing for me. Okay, we all know that today the world is currently grieving because of the global pandemic, COVID-19. And it's really incredible that all of you still have time to involve in our content. And I think we have the same faith today. We hope that the world could get better soon. I would like to extend my warm welcome to our speaker for taking their precious time for all of us today. My honorable to the founder of Indonesian Institute for Counseling, Education and Therapy, Associate Professor Ifil PhD Con, and the honorable to all the committee that been put the hard work into this event. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this conference was held from the collaboration between IICT, or Indonesian Institute for Counseling, Education and Therapy, and Redwhite Press, and then many other affiliations. And the participants of this conference came from Indonesia and Malaysia. The theme of the conference is advancing education, science, technology, and innovation based on local global synergy in the industrial era 4.0. It is closely related to the scientific publication. Nowadays, we know that scientific publications have become mandatory for all the academic people. This is in line with the decision of the world-class university, which places scientific publications as an indicator in ranking universities around the world. Education, science, technology, and innovation is an integral part of scientific publication, especially in the um, industrial era 4.0. These four things must be integrated uh, for each other. For example, education needs technology in its implementation, and science needs requires innovation in order to develop. For all of these issues, we already have 5 incredible speakers that came from all over the world. They are Mr. Hillary Finley from USA. Hello, Mr. Thank you for your attendance.
My pleasure.
Mr. Hill is a CEO from Hillary and Associate Project Management and Consulting. And then we have Associate Professor Dr. Asep Bayu Dani Nandianto, SCMN from Indonesia. He is a lecturer in Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. Maybe Dr. Bayu will gather with us later today. Okay, and then we have Dr. Ilyasu Hussaini from Nigeria. He is a member of University Basic Education Commission. And Mr. Ilyas also will gather with us later at noon, at 2 p.m., inshallah. And then we have Dr. Hawati Hashim from Malaysia. She is a lecturer in University Kebangsaan Malaysia. I think she already with us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Morning. Right. Hi.
Morning. Thank you, Dr. Hawati, for your attendance. Last but not least, we have Dr. Phil Edo Esjaya, FSci and Sci Psychologist. He is from Indonesia and he is a lecturer in Universitas Indonesia. Okay, by saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, the International Virtual Conference on Education, Technology, and Innovation 2020 officially open. That's all for me. I hope this activity can be useful for ourselves, society, nation, and country. And if the words or what we lack in welcoming all of you, please accept our sincere apologies. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Miss Yola. For the next agenda, we are listening to the opening keynote speaker by Mr. Hillary Hill Finley. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite our moderator to handle this session, Dr. Izwah binti Ismail. Dr. Izwah, please welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Ethni. Okay, Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to all. So I would like to welcome everybody to the International Virtual Conference on Education, Science, Technology and Innovation 2020. So with us now is our keynote speaker, Mr. Hillary Finley. But first and foremost, let me introduce Mr. Hillary. Okay, as we know, Mr. Hillary is the CEO of the Hillary and Associates Project Management and Consulting in USA. But for now, Mr. Hillary Finley lives in Bali and has worked in 22 different countries on projects and advanced project management education for over 30 years. And additionally, he has visited 63 countries. So for the last 16 years, he has been president of a consulting company, Hillary and Associates, which is H&A, which undertakes consulting and training across a broad and well-recognized group of customers. H&A also specializes in project and program management, project education, and related disciplines such as system engineering. Furthermore, H&A has engaged almost exclusively with high technology entities where multifunctional teams were linked into complex and fast time to market matrix organization with goals to successfully address very unique business objective on a global basis. Okay, from the initial project management effort into corporate program management discipline and then into the coupling this discipline with strategic execution, Mr. Hillary involved long-term engagement in the evolution of the companies. So his project experience reads like a Fortune 500 list on the high end and strongly reverberates with successful tiny startups. Very impressive. Educational teaching in programs with long-term engagement include Stanford University's the Center of System Management, Cisco, Space System, LoRa, and among others. So without further delay, I would like to invite Mr. Hillary Finley to deliver his speech, which entitled Preparing for Future Challenge. Okay, you are welcome, Mr. Hillary.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Here we go. First of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to share this conference with all of you. You've had an overview of me and my company, excuse me. And what I would really like to share with you is some of my strong opinions, and they are my opinions, on trends, worldwide global trends in technology, trends in education, and how both of these things will affect you in terms of trends in your career. So let's start with a kind of fun question. Just to yourselves, answer the question, how old is the iPhone? And the second question is, what in the world is IoT? What we're going to do is take a very quick look at disruptive products, disruptive technology, and what an impact they have on our world. So, to answer the question, let's first of all talk a little about the age of the iPhone. Excuse me. If you guess the iPhone is about 12 years old, you are absolutely right. That's all it is 12 years old. It represents a category of technology called smartphones, of which now there are many. But think for a moment about what life was like before you had an iPhone. If I leave my house and I don't have my iPhone with me, I don't feel, when I discover that I'm lacking it, I don't feel like I'm dressed, that I'm running around partially nude, because we are all so dependent on technologies such as smartphones. It's important to note that this kind of technology is very disruptive to what our lives were, and this pace of technology change is going to continue at a more rapid rate on a continuous basis. Disruptive technology is something that I can give you two great examples of. Apple, in inventing the iPhone, had no intention of doing away with wrist watches. But I don't need a watch anymore if I have an iPhone, because I know exactly what the time is. Secondly, I don't need a 35mm camera anymore. So if you were Canon or our recently announced Olympus, which is leaving the camera business, you can see how disruptive this little device has been on photography. Good examples of things not quite planned for, but nevertheless have a large consequence on our future. And that leads us right into what is IoT. Very briefly, The Internet of Things is referred to as IoT. It is a catch-all term for any growing number of electronic devices that connect into computing devices. They are not terrifically intelligent IoTs, but they serve very specific functions. In the diagram you're looking at, you'll notice that an iPad is connected to the kitchen coffee maker. My iPad wakes me up in the morning, and I also have a little instruction that says, turn on the coffee machine, which it does when my alarm goes off. This is an example of the Internet of Things. In other words, devices with specific purposes, be they your phone or your coffee maker, are interconnected through the net. Currently, there are about 50 billion devices as of this year that are IoTs that are already in existence. So one of the things that is going to happen to us in our lives is this Internet of Things. Secondly, the internet is not only connecting to these devices, but is getting substantially faster. This brings up 5G and the 5G network architecture that represents current technology. This little diagram is my way of trying to explain in a couple of words what 5G is. Notice here, it is connected and integrated into 4G technology. You have a central server, a switching system that the network is connected to through Wi-Fi. 4G transmitting towers that are very common all over the world are now being incremented with 5G cellular technology. And that could both be small and large. But what's most important in what is coming in 5G is if you look at the table, 5G is incredibly fast compared to 4G. 4G maximally in a country like South Korea, which has an outstanding network, runs at about 15 megabytes per second. 5G will give you 1 to 10 gigabytes per second. What that means is your favorite Korea soap opera will run very smoothly on your smartphone without interruptions and with lots of other activities that you can do simultaneously. This evolution of telecommunications as part of our daily lives that the smartphone so well represents as a telephone is now going to just literally explode into all kinds of devices that are run through the Internet of Things. Here's an example of that. Down in the corner is a little diagram with a small cell 5G system, and it's a store. As I'm getting the bill from the waitress for the meal that I've ordered, I can tell my car to check the temperature of the car. I do this by just punching one button on my cell phone. The car sends a transaction to the central processor and finds out that the interior of my car is too hot. It's been in the sun while I've had lunch. So the car engine automatically starts and turns on the air conditioning with all the security to ensure someone can't steal my running car. And as I get my receipt and my money from lunch, I can walk out onto the street and get in my car, and it's comfortable. The temperature is at 18 degrees, for example. This little example of what can go on in your life is just going to be commonplace for us. Our homes will be using the Internet of Things. our activities during the day will use the Internet of Things. And whoa, pay attention, so will education. So with this as a background, let's talk a little about how the Internet of Things and these technologies are going to affect technology within education. Again, these are my opinions, but I think you will have heard some of this before. As we're all aware, the coronavirus has really disrupted social life, educational life, international trade, just about everything you can think of. From a historical point of view, the virus is a temporary event. That is going to go back to a more normal existence in our lives with vaccines and cures for this virus. It's probably not going to be a big event 10 years from now. However, COVID-19 has had an impact on our lives that will not be temporary. For example, it has greatly accelerated online education, dramatically accelerated online education. And what I'm of the opinion is our institutions have not been ready, have not been prepared for online education, where it is all the time to all of our students and all of our courses. Universally, worldwide, we just are not ready for online education, in my opinion. Not in Malaysia, not in Indonesia, not in the United States, not in France. All age groups, all societies, we simply have not aligned ourselves well with the fact that we're trying to teach children, our students, full-time online, and we're just not prepared for it. I'll give you an example of that. In working with Stanford University and developing a course in project management, as an example, we will first plan the course and then design it and build it and test it and have all kinds of tools that go into it. And it will be fast-paced, a 6-month effort to get this course ready to go online. Now contrast that with the school that had to close in February and the next day have online courses. And that's exactly what I mean by saying institutions were just not ready for this type of demand. Secondly, in our future, institutions are going to have to be changing. They're going to be forced to change. If you are Stanford University or any other university, you have to deal with issues around how do we charge our full-time students for school when they're remotely learning? So we have huge financial issues. We have logistical issues. We have a campus that's built for people being face-to-face in education. Those campuses have housing, they have cafeterias, they have classrooms and lecture halls and facilities for testing, and the list goes on and on and on. How much of that is relevant when we're doing online learning? And equally important to these other issues is how do we learn when basically we're giving people an opportunity to undertake education self-directed. I take a course on my time and in my environment in the way I would like to have it. So the first trend in education as a result of these technology jumps is yes, we're going to use online technology. Yes, we're going to use the Internet of Things. Yes, we're going to use 5G and whatever else we have. Yes, we're going to be using the web. But it is much, much more. And it really is exciting when you start to break down the walls around a classroom. In my opinion, COVID-19 kicked off this online learning trend that's now globally, but it's going to continue after COVID-19 is a solved problem. Online learning is going to grow exponentially. It is going to take off like a rocket. Textbooks and curriculums have already are going digital. They will continue to be so. Integrated into that is the Internet of Things, and that includes using virtual reality, for example, as part of our classroom. Now think about this and how much more interesting the class will be. I'm in a high school biology class, and in the corner of my classroom or down the hall is a virtual reality setup. So I put on this mask that looks something like a scuba mask, and now I'm in a virtual environment. And rather than studying a human cell as a two-dimensional drawing in a textbook, I physically, through my virtual reality, walk into a cell, a human cell. And I can see what each of the various items that make up a cell, like the DNA, the chromosomes, this RNA, mitochondria, I can look at them in proportion and in 3D dimension to the way they actually exist within a cell. Think of how much more interesting that biology class is going to be, and how much more I'm going to learn by being able to go through a cell wall and actually walk around inside the cell. Here's another example of what's going to be coming in our classrooms. 3D printing is taking off now and is actually getting quite inexpensive. What if I could take a limb like a human arm and build it right in front of me using a 3D printer? I can first start off with the bone structure, and then I can see how muscles and tendons attach to the bones, and I can actually watch as that limb gets built with blood vessels and skin, and all of that's right in front of me, real time. I can stop and walk around and pick it up and examine it in ways that are just hardly imaginable compared to what education once was using a textbook. So the first trend is technology is going to be here, and it's going to be much, much bigger than we can all imagine. Second major trend is this technology is going to make us much more connected. And that's going to increase collaboration, and it's going to increase co-creation, which is another word for doing things as a team. We all feel that education is really, really important. And I'm going to talk about lifetime importance in just a moment. But education is worth it. Maybe the campus and maybe a physical four-walled classroom is not worth it. For centuries, we've been in a classroom where a teacher leads us in education, stands in front of us, lectures, we take notes, and there's not a lot of interaction, and there's a lot of rote learning. That's a concept that has been around since the ancient Greeks or the ancient Chinese. It's literally thousands of years old. With the Internet of Things and with technology, classrooms are just going to be another coexisting entity of physical space in an environment that is online. This means we can learn off campus. We can actually look at a lecture off campus. We can do our digital textbook reading off campus. We can study the notes that come along with the lecture off campus. And when we go onto campus, it is not to listen to an instructor, but it is spent building things with my fellow students in a collaborating environment. In other words, facilities that bring students together is not going to be for lectures, it's going to be for building things. What a novel idea. Here's an example of something that's very common in American college classrooms now, a circular table. Actually, it's common in elementary schools. And what we do is we get around this table, and as a group, we work on a problem. So we'll use communication tools to get us up to speed on the subject matter, but we will use our classroom time to collaborate and communicate ideas. Teamwork is going to be very much part of our new educational environment. And it's going to emphasize group creativity versus your learning knowledge as a standalone person. This is the way real life works. This is the way businesses do things. We solve problems by groups and by bringing creativity together. Learning will focus not on memorization. You won't be asked to take a test based on what you've memorized. You will be evaluated on how well you and your team solve a problem, just like in real life. What that means is that organizations, whether they are a government entity, an education entity, a private corporation, are going to have available to them a way of a group learning new information and working to build something that is fast time, that's very specific to a given problem, and is very job related as an adult. So again, we're not going to be in a lecture environment as adults when we're asked to take on a problem. The third trend is pretty obvious, I think. Education is now going to become anywhere, anytime learning. Think about that for a moment. To become educated, I don't have to enroll in a university program. To get certified in a new given skill, I don't have to attend classes. I can get all of this information and all of this knowledge and show my capability in it online. And I can do it late at night. I can do it early in the morning. I can do it at home. I can do it as a breakout from work. Shoot, I can do it on the beach on a Saturday. Technology is not going to be a motivating factor. It's going to be simply in existence there to augment, to help us in our learning. We're going to have endless boundaries in terms of where we can obtain this knowledge, not limited by someone else's clock or by a restrictive 1 hour, but boundless in terms of the knowledge we gain on our time and in our space and in an environment that helps us be skillful. Here's something else that's very amazing. Have any of you heard of the MOOC? MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Courses. They are becoming part of Western education in North America and in Europe. And here's an example of it. There is a really outstanding instructor at Harvard University who is a Nobel Prize winner in mathematics. You without any previous qualifications can take a free class from this individual on Introduction to Calculus. You can do it tomorrow and have one of the best instructors in all of the world giving you insight into this very amazing part of mathematics. Massive open online courses, there are consortiums being built around the world now that have faculty teaching these kinds of classes, and they're moving rapidly toward figuring out ways to give students credit for taking these classes. Most of them are now for free, but most of them don't give you credit for taking it. That will soon change. And so your curriculum would not necessarily, as a college student, be limited to what your university offers you. It could be within the university system. The University of California has 32 campuses in the state of California. You could take certain classes online by a teacher that's hundreds of kilometers from where you are, who is teaching this class. You could take a separate course that is taught by a professor from Oxford University in England. So courses that you take and the curriculum that you're learning is not at all limited by the boundaries of your physical campus. You're interconnected globally. And one of the neat things about our learning is that it won't be focused on, how to say it, rote learning or memorization. It's going to be focused on goals, specific project-oriented tasks that you have to complete using this new knowledge. That's pretty cool, and that is certainly engaging to a student. Fourth trend in all of this, and this is really interesting, you, the learner, you, the student, are going to be first priority in your education. That is, the education you take, even the curriculum that you are getting a degree in from your university, is going to be customized for you. Now, if you go to a physician, a doctor, they treat you as an individual, as a unique individual based on your unique medical needs. And the doctor develops a personalized treatment plan for how you're going to be addressing this medical need. This is very common in most industries. You go to an accountant, the accountant tailors their efforts toward what you need for taxes or business, et cetera, et cetera. Most of the world operates this way, treating you as a customer and individually. Education is a little slow on getting to this point, but we now are beginning to have the tools where we can customize education as well. What is the role of the teacher in that kind of an environment? I think teaching is going to become much more exciting because we are going to be facilitators of learning. The students will have more control over their learning and how they absorb it. We will simply help them in applying this knowledge to the problems they're trying to solve. As facilitators, we'll be coaches, mentors, encouragers of individuals in learning. Won't that be exciting? Won't that be quite wonderful as a difference from standing up and talking for an hour to a group of people in a lecture hall? And one of the things it's going to do is it's going to get rid of this one size fits all. If you look at one of the problems we have in education is all of us work at different abilities and different speeds and acquire skills in different ways. What we know is that if we try to fit all students in a classroom into this kind of an environment, we're going to have students that become disengaged, start misbehaving, have bad outcomes in terms of their learning experiences because they're not involved with what they're learning. They're not making choices. So one of the most powerful things about this new type of environment, this new type of Internet of Things applied to education, is it gives us a graceful way to acquire skill and knowledge within our own abilities and skills. That to me is very exciting. Finally, what are the trends that I've talked about in terms of you and your career? So let's spend just a moment. We've looked at some technology impacts. We've looked at some education impacts. How do we look at this in terms of you? Here's a shocking fact. In the United States government, there is something called the Department of Labor, a federal organization, a national organization responsible for helping the country figure out what kinds of jobs are needed and what kind of skills are needed to go with those jobs. And for over the last more than 10 years, the Department of Labor has said the average American will change careers 8 times during their employment history. Wow, think about that. 8 times during your lifetime employment, you will change your career. Now, this isn't going from teaching 4th grade to teaching 5th grade. This is going from teaching to developing curriculum, to becoming a course counselor. So radical differences in your career. And you go, how in the world could that be 8 times in my life? That sounds ridiculous, Hill. I want you to recall what we started this lecture with. The iPhone, 12 years old. Okay? Think of the number of people that are now employed in some aspect or another with the iPhone. They design it, they manufacture it, they sell it, they service it, they develop thousands of applications that run on it, and it is barely more than 10 years old. 12 years ago, this device didn't even work. And think of the millions of people today that are employed around smartphones. That's just an example of how we're going to end up changing our career multiple times. Here's another one. I've read projections that say by the year 2030, and remember it's now 2020, you might very well be working in a job that does not yet even exist. So the challenge for education, the challenge for you, and the challenge for governments is how do you prepare for a future job role when it's impossible to predict what that role is going to be? Based on my consulting career and what I think makes for successful employees, here are some coaching points that I think are worth considering when it comes to change in you. First of all, we need to be flexible in our thinking. The academic word for this is cognitive flexibility. Cognitive is just a college word for thinking. This constant improvement in technologies and its disruptive abilities means you're going to need to be able to handle change. Change is going to be constant in our lives. It's going to be part of everything we're doing on a week and monthly and yearly basis going forward. There's going to be a constant explosion of both opportunities and challenges as a result of technology innovation. So the first thing we need to get a handle on is the fact that we need to be mentally flexible. Because if you're going to resist change, you are limiting your future. You are limiting your ability to be part of what is coming. This means that you need to be flexible mentally. You need very much so to be able to adapt quickly to technology changes and to apply that technology to your environment. And you need to be able to appreciate how you can use this technology in new ways. Often that involves things that are more complex in the way that we look at them. By that, I mean, it's not just education that you're trying to do, but it's education that is customized for this skill that we're trying to teach, and it's going to generate lots of opportunity and lots of challenges in the way we look at it. So we need to be able to look at things in a new, vibrant, changing environment. And this leads to one of my most critical points, one that I emphasize with companies I work with and with people I work with. And if you're 1 year away from graduating from college, this is not going to be good news, I know. But what we're challenged with that will be part of our lives is that we must never stop learning. Learning is going to be a lifetime endeavor. We are going to be lifetime learners. If we're going to participate in self-fulfilling, satisfying ways, we need to accept the fact that we're going to face lots of changes and that therefore we're going to need lots of continuing skill development. So there is an opportunity for every university and every school in the world to begin to think of not just training you for this year, but how do we train lifetime learners? We also need to be digitally literate, and we need to develop analytic skills. Okay, these technologies are going to change. We need to be adaptive to them. We need the ability to do such simple things as know how to plan something. How do you get from A to E? A, B, C, D, what are the steps that we need? What is the plan we're going to do? And STEM classes inherently are good at teaching how to analyze and come up with brainstorming ideas about how to solve something. There is a new discipline called SMAC, which is social mobile education that involves analytics and uses the cloud as part of the development. You need to understand how these things come together for you in your career. Now, let me give you an excellent idea of this. I had a staff member not too long ago who was looking at wanting to buy a home with his wife, and they had gone out several weekends looking at homes, and they were getting very disappointed and very frustrated about this. Do you know that there's a skill in engineering or in mathematics that's called decision analysis? And it's used heavily in these disciplines. It's a way of looking at lots of information and deciding what you need to build or do to solve a problem. So I sat down with this person and we went through making up a decision analysis chart. Where did I learn that? From a class in engineering. So even if you're in English literature, these methods are going to be important for you in terms of applying new thoughts and new technologies to new ways of teaching. And what that means to me is continuous learning also means that you take lots of certification courses in your continuous learning environment. You pursue education rigorously.
Ye.
Judgment,
Saya sih
decision.
Yola itu aja ragu mah. Apa kayak Yola aja kalau nggak salah dibacanya tadi.
I'm sorry. Just a couple more slides and I'll take some questions. Here is another part of being prepared for the future, and that is judgment and decision making. Good judgment is critical to doing things. I once had a boss that had an interesting suggestion that I have really signed up for. He said that as an organization, we need to be right 80% of the time. Now think about that for a moment. We don't need to be right all the time because that would say we're not going to take any risk. But being right 80% of the time says when we make risky decisions, we have thought them through well enough that we've biased ourselves toward success. So the way that you could summarize this is, hey, be educationally educated from a historical point of view when you look at something. What has worked in the past on solving this kind of a problem? What hasn't worked in the past on solving this problem? And most importantly, why? Why did it work or why didn't it work? This is part of good judgment. Let me tell you something, good people. When I meet an individual who's 32 years old, and they seem to be wise beyond their years in business knowledge, business acumen, one of the things I know for a fact is they have had a good coach on developing judgment in decision making. So how do we get there? Well, develop expertise on how to do a plan, and equally important on how to execute that plan that you have thought up. I am constantly amazed at how many companies develop a plan and yet fail at trying to execute it. They just do not apply good decision making and good judgment to what they're trying to do. And their planning is often very inadequate as well. So these are things you can learn. You can actually take courses in this kind of area. And it doesn't matter what your current discipline is, what your current career is, knowing how to do a plan and how to execute it are very critical to your future. There are many models that are available for making decisions. To help you with those, I talked about decision analysis. And understand that when you're making decisions, that you have thought out carefully what you're really after. I don't know how many times I have attended a meeting in a company where someone in developing the product in this meeting we're having comes up with a goal that says, this new product must have high customer satisfaction, or this new product must be user-friendly. But they never define what they mean by either of those things. And then they don't understand why their project has failed. So part of good judgment and part of good decision-making is the ability to define what it is you're trying to achieve. One of the best ways, besides taking courses on this, is to align yourself with a good coach, a good mentor, someone who's always challenging you. Someone comes into my office with a problem, I never give them an answer. Never. I ask them to tell me what they should do. And then we start discussing how to approach that. That's what we mean by good coaching. Okay, almost there. Final couple of slides. Something else you need for your career is, besides IQ, which we all understand, is EQ. EQ is this emotional and social intelligence that in the last 25 years has really taken off as an important piece of skill and knowledge everyone needs. Think about this. No amount of Internet of Things, no amount of smartphones, no amount of artificial intelligence is going to equal your unique human characteristics. And those characteristics include being able to work closely with others, having empathy with those that you're working with or those that you're working for, having the ability to collaborate and give and take and come to consensus on important and not so important things, and having excellent communication skills. These are all part of what good EQ represents. Final slide. Get into the mode of being creative and innovative in the way you look at things. A machine, a robot, is never going to replace you in creativity. It's something machines are not designed to do. One of the ways to help you be creative and to help you be innovative is ask yourself all the time in all kinds of environments to develop a natural, inherent curiosity. Why is this working or why isn't it? What is the benefit of this? What is the drawback of it? Is there a different way or a better way of doing it? And have an attitude in looking at this that says, wow, that's interesting, that's fascinating. And just to give you a moment of curiosity and insight into this last slide, yesterday a grasshopper came into my office and landed next to my computer. And in looking at this guy, I was kind of startled to notice that on its hind legs, it had these little spurs, these little upticks in skin, all the way down both of its very powerful back legs. And I looked at this grasshopper and I looked at those legs and I thought, why is that? What are those used for? What's its benefit? I was interested in this. What I found out through being curious about this is those spurs, among other things, are used for singing. The grasshopper rubs its back legs together and produces a noise that's attractive to mates. This idea of being creative about everything in your life, about asking, why is that? And could we do it better? Is something that will develop remarkable skills that are highly of value to you, your family, your society, and valued in terms of being prepared for your future. I want to thank you for your time with me today, and I hope I have given you some thoughts that will be of interest, and I have very much enjoyed being part of this participative group. Do you have any quick questions for me? I think I have a couple minutes for a question or two.
Okay, to the audience, I'm sure all the audience, after hearing this very interesting presentation from Mr. Hillary, you would like to have some questions or comments, but please, the audience can type the questions in the chat box, chat sections. So I will read the questions on behalf of the audience. So in our session, we have the chat widget. So the audience, if you have any questions, you can just type it in the chat section and I will read it to Mr. Hillary. Okay, we have one question, Mr. Hillary. So I will read it for you.
All right.
Dear Mr. Hill, this is a really interesting topic, but how do you respond to the challenge of digital literacy for developing countries such as Indonesia, which has limited facilities and infrastructure?
Excellent question. Excellent question. I think we as keepers of Indonesia's future really need to be advocates. I don't know of another word to use. Advocates for us, first of all, increasing our telecommunication abilities so that things like Wi-Fi is stable and faster, and that we ensure that all of our students, regardless of their age or their background or their income, have access to the types of tools, smartphones, ThinkPads, whatever, that will enable them to join the 21st century. So from my point of view, I in India talk, every time I talk to someone, literally I'm advocating for how can we get a better network? How can we get this backbone of technology implemented? And it, like many things, will require us to look at problems in a different way for solutions. But being an advocate is going to help move us forward. And I certainly think we need that to help meet our education goals. Great question. Well worth spending a lot of thinking time on. Thank you for the question.
Okay, but Mr. Hillary, I also want to use this opportunity to ask some questions to you, So in your slides number 18, can you give an example of models on how to make a good decisions?
I'm sorry, how to make?
In your slides number 18, can you give some example of models on how to make a good decisions? Just name it.
I've closed my slide set. What is
Okay.
it? Just 1 second. I apologize. I premature. Since I closed it, we'll have to open it again. Okay. And this was slide 18.
Yeah, slides number 18.
Boy, someone has been tracking this well.
Okay. You did mention that there are a few examples about on how to make a good decisions. But could you give me some examples, maybe 1 or 2 types of models that we can use?
Okay. Okay. Another excellent question. Something we're all familiar with is what James and I talked about in his personal problem about buying a house. So let's use that real quickly for this decision analysis. Decision analysis says you have 1 or 2 things that are must-haves, that is, must be satisfied. And then you have a lot of wants. Okay? So you take a piece of paper and you say, these are the 2 things I must have, and the rest of the list is things that I want. Must have is a good example is price. The price of the house cannot be more than this amount. Let's make it simple. 100, no, let's say 800 million rupiah. Okay, so the house we can afford cannot be more than 800 million rupiah. The second must have is it must be in a good location. That would include being close to schools, close to our work, a safe neighborhood. So those are must-haves. I'm not going to look at a billion-dollar house because that doesn't meet my must-have criteria. It's too expensive. And I'm not going to look at this house because it's out in rice land, a long way from anything else. So those are my two must-haves. The rest of my list is prioritized. It might include 3 bedrooms, a little backyard for the kids to play in that's safe, new, so I don't have a lot of maintenance to do. All of us have individual needs when it comes to a house. So those would go into my matrix. And I assign points to this. Go, no go are the must-haves. So there are no points assigned to those two things. Does it meet my price criteria? Is it in a nice area? Yes, yes, great. Now I look at my needs. Does it have 3 bedrooms? No, it has 4. So I give that a score and I compare one house against another. And what this decision analysis does is it takes the emotion out of buying a house. That is, I don't get all carried away because the house is next to the beach and I forget that I need a place that's convenient for work and convenient for schools. So that is a great example of decision analysis. And I hope I explained that in a way that's understandable. A couple of must-haves and the rest of your needs are prioritized based on a point system.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hill, for the very brief descriptions. Okay, so actually I would like to express our appreciation for your most interesting talk, but unfortunately we already have we already reached the end of the sessions. Thank you again for being with us this morning. And before I give back to
I
Ms.
would like to
Effie,
say thank you.
okay, can we have some photo sessions? So everybody will look to the camera. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Back to Miss
Pleasure,
Effie.
really. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Mr. Hill and Dr. Iswa. This is a very interesting topic and asking for more discussion. And let me give the highest appreciation for our moderators and invited speaker. Okay, we move on to the next agenda, that is plenary session with Dr. Harwati Hashim. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite our moderator to handle this session, Ms. Rima Pratiwi Fadli, SPD, MPD. Ms. Rima, please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, good morning for our body. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in the International Virtual Conference on Education, Science, Technology, and Innovation. Okay, in this morning, I hope we have any blessing from the God to do this activity. Selamat pagi, Bapak Ibu peserta The International Virtual Conference Education, Science, Technology, and Innovation 2020. Alright. Puji syukur kita ucapkan kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Praise of gratitude to the presence of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to the God, and salawat and greetings we send to the great Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, good morning. Welcome Dr. Harwati Hasim. Good morning for Mr. Hilary Finley, Dr. Izwa, Ibu FD Ceria. First time, the Honorable for the founder of Indonesian Institute for Counseling, Education and Therapy, the Honorable to our keynote speaker in this conference, the Honorable of Committee of this conference, and especially for all the presenter of the International Virtual Conference on Education, Science, Technology and Innovation 2020. Okay, in this time, please let me introduce myself. I'm a moderator in this session. My name is Rima Pratifatli. My call name is Miss Rima. I want to introduce the second keynote speaker. Beliau adalah seorang senior lecturer, Dr. Harwati Hasim, senior lecturer di the Center for Teaching and Learning, Faculty of Education, University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Oke, saya akan bagikan CV dari keynote speaker kita yang kedua. Bapak dan Ibu bisa lihat?
Bisa.
Oke. Keynote speaker yang kedua adalah Dr. Harwati Hasim. Bapak dan Ibu bisa lihat, beliau adalah dosen di Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. Alright. She then earned her PhD in educational teacher from UKM. She is an educational technology enthusiast and a learning practitioner. Ini adalah daftar publikasi dari beliau. Kemudian beliau juga mempunyai berbagai macam penghargaan. Today she has won more 30 medals, including a diamond medal from local international innovation competition, mainly focusing on learning, mobile learning, augmented reality, and the use of social media for learning. Okay, it's about our keynote speaker, the second keynote speaker. Now for to Dr. Harwati Hasim, time is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Rima. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Hilary. It was an interesting topic delivered by you just now, which is, I believe, very much related to what I'm going to continue after this. And let me open my slide. I believe Mr. Hilary did mention on preparing for future change in your speech, in your keynote speech just now. And I think when we mention on that, it is like two sides of one coin, whereby preparing for future change is where education is also coming in complementing what we are trying to achieve here. And I believe also preparing the future-proof graduate is very important. So with that, I'm going to start with my presentation. I hope that you are able to see. And I am very much, I'm glad that you have brought up the issue on preparing for future change whereby I'm going to continue narrow it down to the landscape of education. So can you hear me, Rima? Yeah, all right. So thank you so much, Rima, for the introduction. And here I'm going to share my talk on redesigning digital pedagogy for learning improvement and teaching enhancement. So there are three key points that I'm going to highlight in my speech or in my talk, where talking about redesigning digital pedagogy, and then I'm going to talk about learning improvement, and I'm going to talk about teaching enhancement. And with that, my presentation is prepared based on, all right, these four elements, or these four subheadings, which are actually, I'm going to talk about what leads to digital pedagogy just now. Is it because of the disruptive technology? And then what is actually digital pedagogy, and what needs to be considered when it comes to digital pedagogy? And then what needs to be done in redesigning digital pedagogy. So we are going to touch about revisiting. I'm going to touch on how to look into the components and how to revisit the key components of redesigning digital pedagogy. Okay, so these are the four main things that I'm going to discuss in more or less about 1 hour talk. And first and foremost, when we talk about what leads to digital pedagogy, if we have, probably everyone has read this somewhere, that education is evolving due to the impact of the internet. So we heard of Hillary mention on how education has changed using augmented reality, massive open online courses and everything. And with that, we cannot teach our students in the same manner in which we were taught. So like education should not be the same as how we learned 20 years back. Okay, and change is very much necessary to engage our students. So, and then it leads to, we should be able to understand who are our learners before getting into deciding the pedagogy. And of course, when we talk about generations, okay, and you can see there are many generations, a few generations of learners. We have from baby boomers, we have from generation X, we have those who are considered categorized as generation Y, and we have generation Z. Like myself, in higher education institution in UKM, we have this Gen Z now as our students, as our learners. And I believe at the primary level now, or in Indonesia, you call it SM rendah, ya, SM, sekolah rendah, ya, sekolah rendah, whereby those who are of age 7 to 12 are now getting into schools, are getting into education, and they are actually the alpha generation, not even in this category. So because in higher institution now, we have this Gen Z category, not yet alpha generation, but in a few years coming in, they are coming into our institution, and you are able to imagine, or perhaps you will not be able to imagine, what kind of education landscape that they are expecting from us, of this from this alpha generation. Okay, so because of in higher institution now we have a lot of generation Z, so perhaps I can share the characteristic of Gen Z. As you can see in my doodle, we have to understand that they are multitaskers, they are diverse, they are very social, they love to use social media, they share their life, their personal life in social media, and however they are very impassioned, yeah, because they need instant gratification, they are very much self-aware. On the other hand, they have a very low self-esteem. Apart from that, they are also very sophisticated, apart of whatever with their low self-esteem and everything, but still they are very generous and sophisticated. Generous in the sense that they love to share. if you can see in YouTube, they have done a lot of videos sharing on how to play this, how to use this, what is their testimony of using this certain product. So they love to do that. They are very generous in that sense. Why? Because they are very curious. They are very competitive. They are very economical. When they do videos on YouTube, they can generate their own income. So that's why they are very economical. And then they are very pragmatic and self-reliant. And also, because they are multitasker, we should be able to understand that they are very motivated, knowledgeable, and they have this high expectation when they are coming into education institution. So all this need to be considered when it comes to education. And if I were to share a little bit of Malaysian landscape of higher education 4.0, what we are aiming is that our learners to be connectors, creators, and they are of constructivists, meaning that they are able to access to experts, they are learners as connection makers, they are open to access to information because information is everywhere. And they are also aimed to be learners as teachers. So there's no more saga on the stage. You see, usually lecturers is always the one who is giving the input. And now we are expecting them to become the teachers. And with that, they need to have diversity of network. It's not that before this, if I were to reflect during my school days, I only know my friends within my small circles. But now learners or students are expected to have diversity of network. And don't be surprised that they're able to do that because of thanks to the technology, thanks to internet, and therefore learners become more globalized. Okay. And also this kind of generations, they would rely on the web as their curriculum. Whenever you want to teach them, they will open the web and check whether this is correct, this is current, this is reliable, you are saying the right thing, you are bluffing. So you see how challenging it is when it comes to this digital education. And of course, we have to also acknowledge learners as content producer and sharer. That means because we want them to be teachers, they want them to teach their peers. So therefore, they are also content producer or perhaps content curators. They curate their own content. And if I were to share this one image, I think this is something that is very common today, whereby when you ask your students to open up their device, you can see that they are working simultaneously using different interfaces at one time. So you can see that they are also chatting on one side, on the other side, they are looking at a graph or material or content or learning content. So it is all related to multitasking, how our learners are. Okay, so again, why digital pedagogy? What leads to digital pedagogy? I have not talked about what is digital pedagogy. So I want you to ponder all this before coming into what is digital pedagogy. So I think I have touched this in one of my talk before on the multiple phases of response during the pandemic crisis, whereby we as educators, we need to be able to understand the outlook, what to be predicted in not just before the pandemic, to actually look into what is happening during the pandemic and what to be learned during the pandemic, and now we're moving towards emerging the new normal. So there are four main phases that we have gone through since the pandemic happens, from rapid transition to remote teaching and learning. And I do agree when Hilary mentioned that we are not ready for online learning, but in a way we have no choice. So we are moving now from being forced to use to emerge that new normal in phase 4. If you can see phase 4 from rapid transition to emerging new normal. So that is why it is very important that we need to reconsider our pedagogy. Okay, and those are the things that lead to digital pedagogy. But the main question here is, what is digital pedagogy? So perhaps many of you have heard of this term, but I believe because of this destructive technology, because of this how it's amazing how technology changed the education landscape. So it is very important for us to look into digital pedagogy. I think perhaps everyone can ask yourself, sorry. Okay, ask yourself, have you ever used technology in your teaching and learning? And if I were to highlight, digital pedagogy is not about using digital technologies for teaching, not just about using, but about approaching those tools from a critical pedagogical perspective. Most of the time that we heard that teachers or faculty members complaining that if I were to do this using online or whatever, it will not be effective. But why? But because it's just a matter of substituting the technology with the face-to-face interaction without revisiting the pedagogy. So you're not looking into approaching those tools from a critical pedagogical perspective. So it's not going to be the same, or else you are just substituting the online with face-to-face. It's just a replacement. Replace is the same thing, but you don't change into the pedagogy. That is why things are not going to be the same, and you claim that it is not effective. Okay, so think about this. Digital pedagogy is not about using digital technologies for teaching, but rather approaching those tools from a critical pedagogical perspective. So now, with that technology, we will have to think of how can this technology be integrated in relevant to the pedagogy that we are using. Okay, and okay, so using digital tools, talking about using the digital tools, it has to be something that is thoughtfully, meaning that you think about it, consider about it deeply. Maybe you have to make some analysis, which tools is suitable, whether this tool is achieving the learning outcomes. So it has to be a thoughtfully processed when it comes to deciding when to use the digital tools, and also paying attention to the impact of the digital tools on learning, meaning that it's not just because I use it because I like it. I use it because I think it's, well, the students like it, but I use it because I think it suits my learning outcome. I should be able to achieve my learning outcome. I should be able to create learners who are able to collaborate. So you have to think of the pedagogical perspective critically. It's not just about, oh, because I use technology because everybody is doing it, or because I use technology because it's pandemic, because we have to do our class online. No, it's not as simple as that. So there are many things to be critically considered. So something to ponder. Okay, and how we want to create. It's a bit of lagging from my device. Sorry. Wait, we have. Wait, not yet. All right. How do we create a world of a network connected learning to enhance or to change experience of learning? Because definitely there's a difference between learning face-to-face and learning online. The experience received by the students definitely different. Some students will say, most of the students would say they love face-to-face, especially when it comes to primary school learners, probably like my children, when they were to have like this class online using Microsoft Team or even Google Classroom, they say, I'm not able to ask my teacher. I'm not able to, even if when they want to ask questions, they even raise their hand, hoping that the teacher is able to see him or her, or wanted to attempt to answer the question. So it depends on the level of education. So how do we want to make a change to prepare a world of network connected learning to enhance or to change experience of learning in terms of digital education? So this is where digital pedagogy is very important. And of course, when we talk about online learning experiences, we want to also highlight on the meaningful online learning. It's not just about the online learning experiences, but it is about making the online learning experiences meaningful. So we have to consider how does that impact our pedagogical approach, whereby learning has to be adaptive, learning has to be personalized, learning may be visual, learning has to be active and thought-provoking, and how to make learning interactive when it comes to digital pedagogy. And with that only we are able to reach meaningful interaction, engaging and motivation or motivating learning experiences for our learners. So there are many things to consider critically when it comes to digital pedagogy. And perhaps when we want to create our content, it's a bit of lagging. Wait. Okay, so perhaps when you want to create our content, we should be able to consider a lot of visuals or perhaps more of a gamified learning approach. So, but in the end, how does this help us in achieving our learning outcomes? That's what most important in digital pedagogy. And talking about digital pedagogy, how it is placed in the components of education. Yeah, a bit of lagging. All right. So we can see that from this Venn diagram, there are three main circles, which are curriculum, online context, and pedagogy. And with that, with the overlapping of the three elements, the digital pedagogy is situated in the middle, whereby it fulfills the curriculum, it fulfills the context, it fulfills the pedagogy. Then we can claim that we are using digital pedagogy, or else it will just remain a pedagogy, could be a face-to-face pedagogy, could be you claim that you achieve your learning outcome, but in the end your students are not able to understand anything. Okay. Now, Dr. Ruben talk about SMAR, substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. So when it comes to digital pedagogy, educators will have to also consider this SAMR model, whereby the use of digital tools, whether it is a substitution, the one that I have mentioned just now, just replacing one activity with another, or is it at the level of augmentation? Yeah, you have to add on to a more advanced activity. So you are going to augment it, whatever tools that you're using for your teaching and learning. Or are you going to modify, transform learning at all, whereby it is learning, but we are not learning. Hi everyone, today we are not learning. So you modify your teaching and learning by using some digital tools, or do you redefine the learning that perhaps students not even realize that they are learning? It could be informal learning. So you are redefining of your class or your teaching and learning. So it comes from enhancement level to transformation levels in terms of digital pedagogy. Okay, so with that, looking at these kind of scenarios in education is very important. It's something that is very encouraged, where learners started to use devices to do their projects, to look into what do you call as project-based learning or task-based learning. They have to complete certain project using devices, and then they collaborate among each other. And with that, they are also able to create their own content. So it is a high time for us to look into digital pedagogy, because we want at the end learning is meaningful, and we want at the end learning is something that is as what I mentioned just now, motivational process. Okay, and students nowadays, if you were to see this kind of, this is in primary school or secondary schools in Malaysia, most of the schools have started using because they have this BYOD, bring your own device. May not be all school, but some schools, especially for the boarding schools, they have started to ask their students to make it compulsory for each and everyone to have a device. And as you can see in this image, students are working with their project using their own device. So they have this BYOD, bring their own devices in classroom, and then they will have to work into a project collaboratively with their friends. So there's no more lecturers or teachers teaching in front, tell them what to do, giving everything, and then or probably, yeah, teachers use technology, but do you use? I use PowerPoint. So by using PowerPoint only in classroom is not at all a digital pedagogy. It's just the method of you delivering. It's just having the PowerPoint just to represent whatever you are saying so that your students are able to catch up whatever you are trying to tell them. So that is not digital pedagogy. Okay, so don't be surprised if you were to get into the right instruction, you are able to get a very interesting output from learners. Like for example, in this image, students are asked to talk about disaster. So they have to create a video using to explain disaster. So they create a video using green screen. So in the end, they have this video presented in classroom, and then it was very interesting. They are not even there, but they use green screen to actually present whatever content given to them. So it is another way of doing a presentation rather than bullet and points. And perhaps to consider this is to look into curriculum as it has to be solving the puzzle. Okay, curriculum has to complement digital pedagogy, and how they complement each other and produce more output and extend the circle is that by having purposeful curriculum content connectors, they have capacity building. We have to look into SAMR, and then to complement that is the range and balance of pedagogies. It's not about one pedagogy at all time. Maybe at one time you use technology to be integrated in problem-based learning. At one time you have to use technology or digital tool for simulations. So it has to be range of and balance of pedagogies. And of course, when we talk about different type of learners, it has to be having differentiation and personalization of learning. You cannot just say that one size fits all. So learning has to be personalized, because when it comes to digital pedagogy, it is even more challenging, because from the side of the educator, you have to think of various styles of learners. So how to make learning personalized to each learners. And of course, there has to be a collaborative planning and critical and creative thinking, as well as age-appropriate pedagogies. Remember, we have different levels from primary school, we have secondary schools, we have higher education. In fact, in higher education, we have undergraduates, we have postgraduates, we have postgraduate of young age, we have postgraduate who are baby boomers. So all this requires appropriate pedagogies for different level of learners. Yeah, and also I'm very much attracted to Hillary story just now about the what do you call the grasshopper. Yeah, it is a very inquiry based learning whereby you keep inquire, how does the sounds produce, why is that for? Yeah, it's a very inquiry-based learning. And how do you integrate this inquiry-based learning in digital pedagogy? So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very challenging for the educators themselves. Yeah, and with that, yeah, sorry for the lagging. Okay, so with that, I am very much, I think I like to touch on this again on the technological knowledge, on the content knowledge, and also the pedagogic knowledge, whereby the digital pedagogies actually overlap in these three. and also talking about how technological knowledge and content knowledge overlap. It is about knowledge and skills of technology practices use. And then between content and pedagogy is about knowledge and skills of pedagogic strategies suitable for the subject. And then how technology knowledge overlap to pedagogic knowledge is about knowledge and skills of using technology. And with that, only digital pedagogies exist in the middle. And I think maybe some are very familiar with this model. It is a TPAC model, and it is a very high time we need to unpack the TPAC model. I love to use this because TPAC, right? So I think, well, don't leave it as a pack only, let's unpack. Okay, so it is high time for us to unpack the TPAC model, because usually TPAC model is used for pre-service teachers, meaning that during a teacher training program, our pre-service teachers are taught, are trained based on TPAC model. But what happened when they are teaching, when they are in service? We are no longer looking at TPAC model and we leave it like that, just like that. So it's high time for us to unpack the TPAC model so that we can actually reflect ourselves as in-service teachers, in-service educators. How do we upskill, reskill our own technology knowledge? And so again, if I were to highlight, TPAC model stands for technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge. And what is TPAC? Okay, TPAC is a useful model for educators. Remember, because it has been widely used for pre-service teachers, but now we have to unpack. Everyone has to unpack the TPAC model, because a TPAC model is a useful model for educators to begin to use digital tools and strategies to support teaching and learning. And TPAC is designed around the idea that content, what you teach, and pedagogy, how you teach, must be the basis for any technology that educators plan to use. So with that only, I believe digital pedagogy could be delivered effectively, could be implemented effectively. Then only learning could be enhanced, and also teaching could be enhanced. Learning could be improved and teaching could be enhanced. And perhaps you can also try to search for TPAC models for you to understand better. And this TPAC model is by Mishra and Kohler 2009, whereby you can see it is very important for us to, if we have only the two components, it will not be enough. If you have technology, but you have content, you are very good at your content, you are very good at using technology, but you don't have the knowledge of pedagogy, something is lacking. If you are good in content, you are very good at pedagogy. We have those lecturers who are very expert, educators who are very expert. They are very good at their content. Everything comes from the words of mouth. This is whatever delivered by them without looking at any technology, they are able to deliver. And then they are very good at pedagogy, but without technology, something is still missing. And if you are very good at pedagogy, if you're very good at using technology, but your content is lacking, still something is missing. So I always believe that digital pedagogy should be a good combination of technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge. Then only digital pedagogy comes in as the overlapping area in the Venn diagram. Okay, right. I think I move to the next one. Forgotten to press this just now. Okay, so we can see that with that, pedagogical content knowledge about content and how to teach specific content, then the essential part, we are talking about the essential part, which is right in the middle, whereby all these three overlap to each other. That is the digital pedagogy area. So with that, an educator needs to have perfect command over the teaching content, of course, because you have been trained for that. So you need to have a perfect command. There's no excuse. If you think that you are lacking in content, then you have to look into more knowledge. And of course, talking about knowledge as well, talking about content has to be updated. Sometimes our content is not relevant in the era that we're having now. So how do we make our content relevant? Of course, and I do agree with Hilary just now talking about lifetime learning. So this is where educators has to be a lifetime learner. And then know which pedagogy method is best in any situation, and also what technology to choose and use so that students learn meaningfully. That is what most important. And if we were to reflect our capabilities, reflect our content knowledge, reflect our pedagogical knowledge as an academic, as an educator, we have to also reflect on our technological knowledge. There is no excuse for us to say, I don't like to use technology. There's no excuse, or else you will become irrelevant. Yeah. Maybe if I were to say this, many will not agree with me. If I say without technology you will become irrelevant. Well, there is a quote says that technology will not replace teacher, but teacher without technology will always be replaced. I don't know, Rima, perhaps you agree with me. Yeah. So how do we redesign digital pedagogy? Talking about redesigning digital pedagogy, we have to also understand the educational experience. And in creating educational experience, engagement as a key predictor of student success. That is what Pascarella and Terenzini mentioned in their studies. It has to be something that is engaged. So how do they get engaged? How do learners get engaged? It has to be cognitive present. It has to be social present. It has to be in terms of teaching present. And above all, in this component, there is supposed to be engagement with participant, interaction with goals or direction. Learners are aware of what they are learning, and then engagement with directions. And from there, they move towards supporting this course, regulating learning, and then setting the climate. What is the right learning environment that is able to help our learners to achieve meaningful learning experience? So in the end, engagement is the key predictor, as what mentioned by Pascarella and Terenzini in 2005. And because our learners are very globalized, are very socialized of this Gen Z, the learning environment that we are talking about is more of community of inquiry. So they have to also interact with the content. They have to interact with the instructor. They have to interact with their peers. So it involves social interactions, cognitive present, as well as teaching present. So interactions come from three different angles, from the content, with the instructor, or even with their peers. So that lead to I would say meaningful learning environment. And how to do that? Some of the suggestions that I have listed in my slide. Okay, so one way of digital pedagogy is, I think this is the most common one, which is on the flipped learning, okay, whereby blending teacher-led session with independent learning, meaning that when you flip your learning, you give students the input beforehand, and then for independent learning, and then when they come to class or when they come online, it's not the time for us to lecture them, to give lecture. It's time for us to, okay, now let us sit down and discuss what have you got based on the video that I have given you last night, for example. So that is flipped learning. It's not that something that you give work and then you come to class and give lecture, or you meet online to give lecture. So flipped learning is something that you input that have been given earlier beforehand, and then when you meet them virtually or online, it has something more of student-centered activities rather than teacher-centered activities. And another way of considering digital pedagogy that is quite effectively is that using teach-back method. Sorry, this slide comes a bit later. Okay, so teach-back method, whereby learning is by explaining what we have been taught, meaning that you let the learners teach, respect their peers. And how do you make this using digital pedagogies? So you have to consider what are the digital tools that is or that are suitable to be used for this kind of activities, for this kind of approach of teach back method. Okay, and then another way is to have seamless learning. Yeah, it's a bit, the slide comes later. All right. Seamless learning, whereby you are connecting learning across various settings, various technologies and activities. So learning has to be done seamlessly. Yeah, sometimes seamless learning is quite informal, whereby students are not aware that they are actually learning. So learning has to be seamlessly. So then only digital pedagogy may contribute to meaningful learning environment. And of course, we have to also put into consideration of having our learner to learning to learn. It's not about learning, but learning how to learn. So that is where our learners need to know how to become an effective distant learner, how to become an effective remote learner, how to become an effective independent learner. So then only they're able to become a lifetime learner, as what mentioned by Hilary just now. And then we have to also consider, when we make use of digital pedagogy, perhaps we can also consider this, making thinking visible. So we need to be able to open windows into students' learning and understanding, whereby they look learning as not constrained into one particular area, but actually broaden their mindset into something else, because we say that informations are on the web. So they are exposed, or they are accessible to a lot of information online. So making thinking visible, and then in digital pedagogy, personal inquiry learning is very important also, whereby learning through collaborative inquiry and active investigation is can be done effectively by using digital pedagogy. So learners are asked to do collaborative work, or probably collaborative inquiry, and perhaps a little bit of investigation in their learning. And of course, we have to be able to promote self-knowledge. So we talk about helping learners to function well in the future. Because remember, I think Hilary mentioned just now, preparing for future change as a higher institution educator or academy, I would say preparing our graduates as a preparing future-proof graduates, future-proof graduates. Yeah, that means they are able to adapt with uncertainty, the world of uncertainty. They should be able to adapt by having our lesson, by attending our courses. It somehow help them to develop certain skills that is actually helping them in facing the world of uncertainty. And then let students integrate the use of technology, and let students realize that learning is a personal process. Make them aware that learning is a personal process. They have to be highly independent and not all from the teachers. So they have to be responsible of their own learning. They have to have this attitude of knowledge seeker. We have to make them aware of that. We have to promote self-knowledge to learners. Then only we talk about digital pedagogy, or else we'll be tiring for the academic, for the educator. Like for example, you ask students to open up internet, and then they ask you, okay, I have opened my internet, doctor, what do I do next? So that means they don't have that self-knowledge. So by right, when you promote all this, when you use technology, when you say, okay, you assign them, you give them the instruction, they should be able to move on to the next level. They should be able to move on to the next level. And then, okay, and also, we have to also rethinking that simply using technology elements in your teaching does not mean that you are practicing digital pedagogy. So you have to be very careful claiming that you are using technology elements and therefore you are using digital pedagogy. So it is not simply about using technology that you claim that you are practicing digital pedagogy. Sorry, someone is trading. All right. So interaction. All right. And with that, we have to be able, as educators, we have to be able to leverage the ecosystem. What kind of ecosystem I'm saying is that we have our learners. Learners are part of the ecosystem. We have our infrastructure. Infrastructure is part of the ecosystem. We have our community of practice, other academics, other educators, internally or externally. Those are the ecosystem that we have. So we have to leverage the ecosystem that we have around us. And not to forget, even it is a digital pedagogy, we should, as educator, we should be able to how to humanize digital pedagogy. I love to mention this. Usually when I mention about having teaching students digitally using digital pedagogy, I would say it is no longer classroom management. If you think that you use digital pedagogy, you want to look into classroom management, you are wrong. So now with this digital pedagogy, it has to be classroom relationship, not classroom management anymore. And with that, the challenging part is the changing role of educators. Okay, and then remodeling learning, and then transform learning, as well as creating philosophical shift in approaches to teaching. So there are four main things to be considered for us to implement digital pedagogies. Revisit or rethinking of your role as educators, and then you may need to be able to remodel your learning, transform learning, and then create philosophical shift approaching to teaching. And with that, learning improvement and teaching could be enhanced. It leads to learning improvement and teaching enhancement. And perhaps I would like to share some of the photos that I believe with digital pedagogy implemented by the teachers or the educators has led to this kind of learners who are very much passionate about doing a project even at a very young age. And they are able to use the technology as well with the help of the teachers. And at the age of 7 and 8, these are two siblings. They are siblings. Age 7 and 8, they are able to make presentation of their innovative project in a competition. Okay, and don't be surprised that you have also learners who doodle. So you have to allow some interruptions. If your learners are drawing or doodling, let them be. Because as you are teaching, perhaps they are doodling the input. So you have to be open to various learners of preference. And learners have started to use devices in classroom. Yeah, okay. And this is one example of situation where learners are asked to create videos and so on, which they have to fulfill some specific tasks. And then sorry, the slide comes later. Okay, and then you can see learners are collaborating. They collaborate to complete their project using multiple devices. And then other than that, we have learners who work into storytelling. So these are among the pictures or the photos of the learners. And then in fact, even teaching has to be done online. Learners are involved in the project whereby we collaborate. Like for example, in this photo, we collaborate our keynote with the learners, and they're able to also work on the workbook using keynote. And because in keynote we can collaborate, we can share, we can collaborate with learners and ask them to adapt to it. So this is what they are doing online with us when it comes to meeting virtually. So we have this kind of faces of learners who are very excited about learning. Okay, wait. Sorry, the slide comes later. All right, so this kind of learners who are very excited, who are very much attached to learning. Okay, and all in all, I believe that, Okay, understanding the identity of pedagogy is a necessity in order to recognize what role the technology can play in supporting teaching and learning, and also to be able to identify the effective practices of teaching and learning. So digital pedagogy in the end is not just about using the technology in teaching and learning, but it is also should be able to be reflecting the content as well as the purpose of using that tools and the right pedagogy to achieve the learning outcome. So then only learning can be meaningful, learning can be enhanced, and very motivating process. So that, and also if I were to touch again what Hilary has mentioned just now, with that kind of attitude only that we create learners who are aware of self-knowledge, and then a knowledge seeker, as well as a lifetime learner. So I think with that, I end my presentation with thank you.
All right. Thank you for our panelist, Dr. Harwati Hasim. Especially in this time, we know that educator have any challenge to handle the class and have many style of learner, and the educator must know digital technology, di mana ada tiga hal yang mesti diketahui, ada content, pedagogi and teknologi. Artinya kita sebagai pendidik mesti memenuhi kombinasi dari tiga aspek itu. Begitu ya, Dokter? Baik.
Betul.
Sudah ada, kita memiliki pertanyaan dari 3 orang peserta. Oke, Dokter, saya bacakan pertanyaannya. The first question is, Dr. Harwati, your topic on digital pedagogy is really interactive. So in your opinion, how can we develop a technical teaching material that efficient to ensure that we transfer not only the knowledge but also the skill? Begitu, Dokter. Thank you.
Okey. Ya, nak baca terus semuanya saya atau saya jawab satu-satu?
Jawab satu-satu, Dokter. Jadi dipersilakan kepada Dokter buat menjawab pertanyaan yang pertama.
Okay, thank you. I think this is a very great question, because by having this question, meaning that you have started to have this inquiry thinking, right? Yes, I would say that this is very challenging, because in creating content, what academic usually do is just replacing what you have in your book or in your note into your content. Meaning that if you were to give the content to your learners, you are saying that, okay, look at my video, try to digest everything and then answer questions. Right? So that is where I think it does not represent, how do we call it? We want the knowledge to be transferred effectively. Whereby by creating our content itself, we have to have this pedagogy in mind at that level, at that stage. Meaning that when you want to prepare your content, what kind of learning you want them to integrate? You want to integrate in your content. Let's say that content is supposed to be achieving one learning outcome. With that one learning outcome, you want students to be able to complete tasks using collaborative learning or probably investigation. So your material should not be something that is delivering the input, but it should be something that trigger their mind. For example, giving a video or a situation that make them think. kemahiran berfikir ya. Now if we look into kemahiran berfikir pula, so whether we use questioning technique, we use what do you call, we have to look into kemahiran berfikir. And if we were to deliver a content using technical teaching material, so it has to be something that is much related of how that content stimulate students in terms of thinking process. And if I were to understand the question, how can we develop a technical teaching materials? Are you a technical lecturer or how? If I get this question right, I'm not sure. Perhaps if I understand this question wrongly, I would share one experience whereby my friends who are technical lecturers, they said they are having problems of delivering lab process, especially those who are engineers. You have to go into labs and then you have to let the students experience of doing simulations and everything. And how do we deliver this online and make the skills transferred correctly? So I may not be the right person or the best person to answer, but I will share my friend's experience. My friends, they came up with this virtual lab whereby students will have to experience using the virtual lab, and to ensure that the skills are transferred correctly. In the end, the students need to be doing some sort of simulation with that virtual lab. So yeah, because I'm not an engineering lecturer, I'm more of social sciences, but I'm saying this on behalf of my friends. Yes, they did venture into virtual lab to help the students to ensure that the skills are transferred correctly. Okay, so I hope it answered the question.
Alright. Artinya kita mesti bagaimana misalnya menggunakan video gitu ya dokter.
Ya,
Bagaimana
betul.
supaya nanti misalnya untuk perkuliahan di engineering, kita mesti menggunakan video untuk ngecek apakah student kita paham ke tidak, macam tu ya dokter.
Kadang-kadang kita guna video, tapi it's just the matter of tunjuk video, tapi kita tak dapat lihat psikomotor pelajar tu adakah teruji ataupun adakah mereka mencapai skill yang sebenar yang kita nak. Tapi that means the video is not suitable lah. Video, yes, as an input, as an example, but how do we want to ensure that by watching the video, the skills are transferred. So itu adalah sangat mencabar. Itu yang saya kata tadi, penggunaan virtual lab. Pelajar boleh merasa sendiri simulasi itu secara virtual. That would be very interesting.
Alright. Menggunakan virtual lab,
betul.
Gitu ya dokter.
Yeah.
Alright. We next to the next question. Dr. Harwati, if we want to get effective in learning, are teachers compulsory to follow the current generation trend? Maybe from Instagram, Twitter, or other? Macam tu, dokter.
Very interesting question. Okay, I would say that we will have to. I always say like this when students ask me how old are you, doctor. I would say, don't ask me how old am I. Ask me how young are you. I would say like that because I usually answer I am very young, definitely. So with that in mind, we'll have to cope ourselves to the generation of learners, whereby if I were to share my experience in a higher learning institution, I would say when I ask my students to like my Facebook, they don't go and like my Facebook, but they requested to follow me on my Instagram. You see the difference between these generations. So I would say I was very curious at that time when I first created my Instagram. They started to follow me on Instagram. So I asked them, why not my Facebook? I asked you to like my Facebook so that we can be friends on Facebook. You know what they said? They said, Doctor, Facebook are only for old people, for makcik. You know what is makcik? Okay, makcik and pakcik are old people, because we have our aunties, we have our grandmas, we have our mother in the Facebook, and you can also see us cursing our friends on our Facebook if we become friends. So as compared to Instagram, if they are following us, only they can see us. We are not able to see them unless we are following them. You see, this different kind. You see, I think Rima sangat dekat dengan Instagram kan. I think I'm very much sure you are very young, Rima. So bila kita guna Instagram, bila kita follow orang, kita nampak. Tetapi sekiranya orang itu tak follow kita, orang tu tak nampak kita punya timeline kan. So that's what they want. They want their privacy space. So they want to follow us, but they don't want us to follow them. So in a way, yes, we have to follow the current generation trends for us to be relevant to them. Or else nanti dia kata, Allah, doktor ada Instagram tak? Saya nak, kadang-kadang bila dia nak apa-apa, kalau saya kata, okay, you buat video, I nak you hashtag in your Facebook. Doktor, hashtag Instagram boleh tak? I don't have Facebook. Dia kata, so I was like, okay, right. So I myself, I have to learn. I have to keep myself updated with the current technology, and I have to know what they like. And I do interviewed one of my learners, one of my students, asking them, why Instagram, not Facebook? They said, they just give me one simple answer. Sorry, doctor, for your information, or for all your information, we, young generation, have migrated. They use this word migrated from Facebook to Instagram because we need our personal space. So you have to understand them in a way. Yeah, the answer is yes. Definitely you have to follow these current generations for you to be relevant.
Setuju, saya pun doktor. Kita pun di macam maybe berbagai Instagram karena generasi sekarang memang connect Instagram macam tu, doktor. Alright, the last question, doctor. Okay, is about pertanyaan terakhir adalah how is learning in Malaysia at this time, doctor? Considering the challenges in the pandemic era, is it necessary to modify the curriculum because of the uncertain situation? Okay, doktor, macam tu pertanyaannya, saya serah sama doktor.
What's the question? Sorry.
Yeah, last question. How is learning in Malaysia at this time, considering the challenges in the pandemic era, is it necessary to modify the curriculum because the uncertainty macam tu?
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Boleh. Okay, sebab saya punya internet putus-putus. This is also another challenge, yeah. During these online activities. Okay. Yes, thank you for that question, Miss Ameliana Nita. So I think that is a very interesting yet challenging to do that. Definitely, it's high time for us to look into to revising the curriculum. And yes, Malaysia, we have started to revise our curriculum looking into the 4.0, education 4.0, and our curriculum is aligned to the industrial revolution, demands of the industrial revolution. And yet, because it is quite new for us, I believe, as what Hilary mentioned just now, we are not ready for the pandemic. For whatever is happening now, then only our real curriculum is tested. We claim that we use online in our curriculum. We claim that we are preparing our students for future-proof graduates. But when it comes to the pandemic and everything has to be 100% online, everyone is challenged. Everyone is panicked. Even I myself is panicked. And then only we think, is this curriculum need to be revised accordingly for us to be able to emerge in the new normal? So that is something interesting to ponder. Well, I believe it's not at my level to think about this because it is more of the key player on the top in the Ministry of Education. But in a way, we have started to look into aligning our curriculum in dealing with fourth industrial revolution. And I think it is also a time for us to strengthen. We have done it, we need to strengthen according to the uncertainty situation. Because now only we are tested. Because we have prepared everything when it comes to the pandemic. We
Right.
are really tested with the situation. So, well, yes, I think that's great yet challenging.
All right, Doctor. Thank you for Doctor. Karena kita punya batasan waktu
Yeah.
untuk di session is the end of the session. Saya sebagai moderator terima kasih kepada semua para peserta, ladies and gentlemen semuanya. Saya pun mengucapkan mohon maaf jika ada kesalahan kata, ucapan. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih.
Baik, dikembalikan kepada moderator kita, Ibu Efni Ceria. Kepada Ibu Efni, saya kembalikan. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Dr. Harwati and Ms. Rima. Digital pedagogy is the hot topic for today, and the challenges not only for the teachers to design, but also for the students. I think IICET must consider to have a special session for this topic with Dr. Harwati soon. For now, let me give appreciation to Dr. Harwati and Ms. Rima. Next agenda, we move on to plenary session by Associate Professor Dr. Asep Bayu Dani Nandianto STMNs. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite our moderator to handle this session, Ms. Nilma Zola, SPD, CMNNLP. Ms. Zola, please welcome.
Terima kasih kepada Ibu Efni Ceria. Selanjutnya, invited speaker kita berikutnya adalah Bapak Associate Professor Dr. Asep Bayu Dani Nandianto STMN. Nah, sebelum kita mulai, sebelum kita dengar penjelasan dari beliau, saya akan bacakan sedikit CV beliau. Nah, Bapak Asep Dani Nandianto ini adalah seorang Associate Professor di Departemen Kimia di Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. Beliau telah menerima gelar Sarjana Teknik pada tahun 2005 di ITB Bandung, kemudian menerima gelar MN, Master Engineering 2008 dan Dr. Engineering 2011 di Departemen Kimia dan Teknik. Nah, Bapak Nandianto, beliau aktif meneliti di bidang teknologi partikel, khususnya produksi partikel halus. Dan beliau telah menerbitkan 12 paten dan hak cipta, banyak buku, lebih dari 50 proceeding, dan lebih dari 69 artikel ilmiah yang sangat banyak terbit di jurnal-jurnal terkemuka dan punya impact factor yang besar. Kemudian 3 dari artikel beliau telah banyak dikutip, yaitu lebih dari 200 kali, dan terdaftar dalam top 10 artikel yang paling banyak di-download. Nah, dengan latar belakang beliau yang luar biasa itu, beliau menerima beberapa penghargaan dan kehormatan, termasuk di situ adalah penghargaan Outstanding Young Researcher Awards pada tahun 2013 dari Society of Chemical Engineer Jepang, kemudian George Cleansing Award pada tahun 2014 dari The American Institute of Chemical Engineers, dan public grants yang didanai oleh Dikti untuk dosen tamu Indonesia sebagai visiting scholar 2018. Kalau seandainya dibacakan semua prestasi beliau, rasanya nggak cukup waktu kita. Jadi untuk peserta yang masih penasaran dengan Bapak Asep Bayu, bisa download, bisa cari di Google saja. Sangat banyak sekali informasi tentang beliau. Oke, karena kita menghemat waktu, kita persilahkan saja langsung kepada Bapak Associate Profesor Dr. Bayu Dani Nandianto. Kepada Bapak, kita silakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Halo, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terdengar suaranya?
Terdengar. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Terima kasih banyak kepada panitia, juga moderator, dan juga Pak Ifdil yang mengundang saya kemarin. Mungkin kalau sesi ini pakai bahasa Inggris atau pakai bahasa Indonesia ya? Mungkin lebih baik bahasa Indonesia saja, begitu tidak apa?
Boleh Pak.
Ya, oke. Kalau gitu sebentar saya ini dulu share screen dulu. Bentar ya. Langsung ini. Share. Sebentar ya Bapak Ibu ya.
Oke. It's okay.
Unmute kan. Coba sebentar ya. Bapak Ibu mohon maaf ada ini masalah teknis saja.
Tadi sudah muncul Pak Asep.
Oh iya. Nah, saya coba share. Nah, ini. Bapak Ibu sudah terlihat muncul ya? Sudah terlihat Bapak Ibu?
Terlihat.
Oh, iya, ya. Oke, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Oke, terima kasih banyak kepada moderator yang ini dan juga panitia. Saya ingin berencana untuk menjelaskan sharing ya mengenai juga partikel teknologi dari from abroad for Indonesia for production, economic and feasibility study, and of course for education ya. Saya Asep Bayudani Nandianto dari Departemen Pendidikan Kimia Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. Selanjutnya ini kurikulum kita saya sudah dijelaskan ya bahwa saya sudah S1, S2, S3-nya. Siapa tahu ada yang satu alma mater dengan saya. Beberapa penghargaan juga saya pernah terima juga, alhamdulillah. Tadi sudah dijelaskan oleh moderator. Nah, di Sinta juga alhamdulillah ya kita itu saya itu jadi masuk dalam top 50 besar di Sinta Indonesia ya. Dan juga sudah pernah masuk ke beberapa majalah dan koran ya yang ada di Indonesia. Nah, ini Scopus dan Google Scholar saya saat ini saya sudah ada 180 yang terindex Scopus dengan high index 25 dan juga Google Scholar saya sudah tersitasi artikel saya sudah 3.200 tersitasi ya. Ya semoga ini jadi bisa menjadi ya kita juga Indonesia juga tidak kalah begitu ya daripada luar negeri begitu. Nah, other experience yaitu saya sebagai editor in chief di Indonesian Journal of Science and Technology yang sejak tahun 2016 dan alhamdulillah IJOS ini sekarang berada pada Q1 dan termasuk di dalam ranking nomor 1 di Indonesia ya. Indonesia jadi Q1 dengan SCR-nya 0,569 ya. Ya, alhamdulillah itu benar-benar jurnal baru, tetapi kita bisa menembus ke level internasional itu luar biasa sekali, Bapak Ibu. Nah, sebelum saya menjelaskan mengenai mengapa kita harus penelitian tentang partikel teknologi begitu ya. Jadi saya ingin menjelaskan mengenai mengapa pertanyaannya kita harus menulis begitu. Kalau misalnya kita harus menulis itu sebenarnya kita sedang menulis sejarah ya, sejarah itu. Yang pertama positive points-nya itu semua orang mengenal kita, knowing us, itu kan understanding our specialties, dan juga use for improving society and technology begitu ya. Dan juga kelebihan lain daripada kita menulis articles itu, itu sebetulnya kita bisa jadi famous ya, terkenal, dan juga kita bisa jadi diundang sebagai visiting. Jadi alhamdulillah dengan tulisan-tulisan saya juga dengan dulu pernah saya kan diundang beberapa tempat ya, beberapa negara juga. Gitu, lalu selanjutnya melindungi orang lain untuk mengambil hak intelektualitas kita. Dan yang terakhir itu yang paling penting itu adalah kita bisa mendevelop ya science, knowledge, and industry di Indonesia utamanya atau di dunia juga. Gitu. Nah, ada tulisan itu ada dua jenis ya, ada yang namanya scientific papers, ada yang namanya patent dengan hak cipta ya. Nah, ini tujuannya untuk mengunci beberapa science and practitioner. Nah, kalau kita lihat lagi, Bapak Ibu, nah, kenapa harus publication gitu ya? Jadi publication itu utamanya kita akan berhadapan dengan namanya university ranking ya, yang jadi institution atau country itu dihitungnya itu dan di ranking dan di benchmark itu berdasarkan jumlah publikasi. Nah, jumlah publikasi dan jumlah paper itu yang dihitung itu jumlah papernya dengan jumlah citasinya itu akan mempengaruhi namanya perankingan dunia. Contohnya QS ranking, academic ranking of World University gitu kan, Time Higher Education, Nature Index, dan juga Simago Journal and Country Rank. Ini ada macam-macam cara rankingan. Nah, jadi kalau misalnya Bapak Ibu ingin memajukan institusinya, memajukan bangsa kita, ya itu yang harus dilakukan itu ya Bapak Ibu harus apapun yang itu Bapak Ibu harus tulis gitu. Dari riset Bapak Ibu yang ada. Nah ini di sini juga ada beberapa dari university, ada dari UGM juga ya. Sebetulnya ada di sini ada 29 top university di Indonesia. Sebetulnya ada 50, saya listnya nanti selanjutnya. Itu kalau misalnya kita lihat publikasi Indonesia itu meningkat Bapak Ibu. Ya misalnya yang UPI saja itu meningkat ya, setiap tahun itu meningkat terus. Nah, ini diambil dari Prof. Hendra Gunawan ya, dari TB ya. Jadi istilahnya ketika peningkatan universitas itu ternyata kita itu masih kalah dengan university yang ada di luar negeri. Contohnya saja kalau kita ambil UGM, di sini ada kebetulan ada keynote dari UGM juga, itu ternyata 50 institusi di Indonesia itu masih jumlahnya kalah dengan UGM. Itu benar-benar perjuangan yang berat sekali gitu untuk Indonesia. Nah, kalau UNP itu ada di selanjutnya di sini ya, UNP itu ada di halaman selanjutnya gitu. Berarti kita perjuangannya masih berat, perjuangan masih jauh gitu. Nah update 2019-2020 dari tim riset saya yang ada itu adalah dengan adanya kita tetap produktif untuk menulis itu, kalau di kami itu ada namanya JIM ya istilahnya, one article journal published in 1 month gitu ya. Di target kami itu di lab itu ada ini. Nah ternyata mempublikasikan itu bagaimana kita memanage gitu. Jadi bagaimana educate daripada para penulis mahasiswa, student gitu. Bagaimana caranya ternyata berhasil gitu, bisa gitu di manage itu. Contohnya ada lulusan dari lab saya juga itu ada 2 sarjana itu, alhamdulillah lulus kemarin. Masing-masing 13 jumlah Scopus ya. Itu alhamdulillah luar biasa. Dan juga kemarin selama COVID itu, ya COVID itu tidak menghalangi tim kami untuk tetap berkarya ya. Alhamdulillah tim kami bersama dengan Brigade COVID UBI itu yang 2020 itu kemarin, itu kami telah berhasil buat nano healing cabin dengan nano sterilizer dan menghasilkan 2 paten dan 2 HKI. Mungkin Bapak Ibu kalau bisa yang melihat boleh itu dicek, itu ada. Kita udah masuk TV juga, udah masuk koran nasional gitu ya. Selanjutnya pada saat kami sebelum COVID itu, kemarin sekali sebelum COVID, kami juga mencoba ya tim kami itu mengupgrade gitu mahasiswa tingkat 1 di satu kelas gitu, lakukan education itu di treatment pakai ini, ternyata bisa menghasilkan satu kelas itu bisa menghasilkan 21 HKI, 3 buku dan beberapa jurnal nasional dan internasional. Dan beberapa jurnal Scopus ada 3 ya. 1 sudah terbit dan sudah muncul di Scopus, 2 lagi yang masih under review. Lalu mahasiswa tingkat 1 yang lain juga bisa menghasilkan 1 buku juga, mahasiswa tingkat 3 juga bisa menghasilkan 1 buku. Jadi kemarin selama COVID itu ya alhamdulillah kita banyak menghasilkan beberapa produk ya. Jadi istilahnya tidak ada istilah kalau COVID itu jadi mundur gitu, tidak. Jadi COVID itu justru jadi tantangan buat kita seperti tadi sebelumnya oleh presenter sebelumnya. Ya COVID itu adalah sebagai challenge gitu. Challenge buat kita untuk maju gitu. Nah, disitulah peran daripada kita sebagai dosen dan peneliti untuk bagaimana caranya agar kita bisa manage student gitu. Jadi di student tuh jangan hanya diberi tugas saja, tapi diberikan ilmu selama pada saat lagi COVID sehingga tetap menghasilkan banyak produk. Gitu. Nah, kita masuk ke dalam introduction daripada partikel teknologi ya. Alasan mengapa saya ingin risetnya itu, sebetulnya risetnya dari S1 saya, riset tentang partikel itu. Yang pertama itu partikel teknologi itu digunakan di beberapa aplikasi ya. Contohnya Bapak Ibu kalau menghadapi dan consumer product itu devices elektronik itu pasti hubungannya dengan partikel teknologi gitu. Healthcare related, drugs, food segala macam sama. Environment juga sama, untuk contohnya waste treatment atau economic and education juga sama, safety regulatory, dan juga national security and military gitu. Ini semuanya berhubungan dengan partikel teknologi. Jadi partikel teknologi itu ada top down dengan bottom up. Jadi istilahnya ketika mereka ingin misalnya membuat kosmetik begitu, itu awalnya dari partikel serbuk terus dipadatkan atau istilahnya di self assembly jadi yang Bapak Ibu konsumer pakai gitu. Makanan juga begitu, obat juga begitu, sama semuanya. Itu tidak bisa lepas dari partikel teknologi. Nah, sebelum saya masuk ke partikel selanjutnya, nah ini penelitian saya sebelumnya. Penelitian saya itu ada 3. Pertama itu synthesis and optimization, juga economic feasibility study, dan education karena saya dari Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia ya. Kita harus bergerak di education untuk mencerdaskan bangsa begitu ya. Nah, jadi saya S1 itu lulus ST itu tahun 2005, lalu saya berada di luar negeri di Jepang itu sampai 2011 dapat Dr. Eng. Lalu selanjutnya 2011 itu saya di Saudi Arabia ini. Lalu saya mulai masuk lagi ke UPI itu tahun 2011 ya, mulai 2011 masuk ke UPI, dan ini saat transisi saya selama di Indonesia gitu. Jadi memang benar pada saat kita kembali ke Indonesia ini ada publikasi saya, ada yang biru itu publikasi, jumlah publikasi. Itu pada saat tahun 2005 saya merasakan benar-benar shutdown gitu. Tahunnya itu kenapa? Karena biasanya jumlah Scopus itu dilihatnya itu dari 1 tahun ke belakangnya. Jadi ini berarti artinya pada saat tahun 2015 saya tidak melakukan riset di sini. Tapi kalau ini kenapa ada riset? Berarti ada tabungan-tabungan sisa saya sebelumnya gitu. Nah, lanjut lagi. Nah, dari hasil kenapa itu hubungannya bagaimana? Jadi Indonesia itu sebetulnya sangat penting sekali dengan partikel teknologi. Jadi istilahnya ada partikel teknologi itu kan ada hubungannya dengan energy and resources consumption, nanti hubungannya dengan population, industri, dengan limitation energy and resources. Nah, ini hubungannya dengan cost semua itu. Nah, ini kita harus terutama di negara kita Indonesia itu need more efficient material and enhance material performance gitu ya. Nah, inilah yang namanya diperlukan further studies in understanding about particle teknologinya itu di sini begitu. Nah, selanjutnya oleh karena itu berarti lahan partikel teknologi benar-benar luas sekali, mungkin bisa jadi istilahnya Indonesia itu seperti sawah ya, kita tinggal siap-siap bagaimana caranya memanen saja gitu. Gitu. Selanjutnya, bagaimana riset saya di Jepang selama 2015-2013. Nah, ini yang pernah beberapa paper yang pernah saya terbitkan gitu ya waktu selama di Jepang. Ini saya pernah menghasilkan MGF2 daripada bentuknya ukurannya berbeda-beda. Lalu juga ada CAF2, lalu masuknya juga MGF2 donat. Nah, ini korsel juga. Nah, ini korsel, dan terakhir ini MGF raspberry. Ini pada saat saya di Jepang itu utamanya saya itu pada saat itu dapat grant dari perusahaan kamera, sehingga semua riset saya pada saat itu berhubungan dengan lensa begitu. Jadi ini bisa digunakan untuk lensa semua. Selanjutnya, ketika saya pindah ke Saudi Arabia, yang terjadi apa? Yang terjadi riset di sana saya berbeda. Riset di sana tentang cracking minyak bumi gitu, cracking oil gitu ya. Pada saat saya ke Saudi Arabia, yang terjadi itu ya shock juga. Kenapa shock? Ya karena mereka tidak perlu masa penelitian tentang lensa, tapi yang saya gunakan ya teknologi partikelnya itu bagaimana caranya mendesain suatu material yang kebetulan sudah diterbitkan di sini ya, itu untuk mengcracking minyak bumi. Gitu. Jadi dari sana istilahnya ada istilah kalau di Indonesia itu namanya itu di mana bumi bijak disulang dijunjung ya. Jadi riset antar satu negara dengan negara itu berbeda gitu. Dan kita itu khas negara kita itu akan berbeda gitu. kalau Bapak Ibu kembangkan riset dari luar juga agak berat kalau di Indonesia karena lahannya beda gitu ya. Tapi begitulah. Lalu selanjutnya saya akan jelaskan lagi pengalaman saya pada saat dahulu tahun 2015 sampai 15 ini kan down ini. Pada saat down-downnya apa yang saya lakukan ya kita tidak boleh sebentar. Pada saat saya down-downnya begini, ya yang saya lakukan adalah apa? Ya tetap menulis gitu. Kalau tidak saya lupa nanti. Jadi saya menulis buku selama 1 tahun di situ. Menulis buku. Lalu 2015 itu saya mulai starting pembuatan jurnal juga. Lalu 2017 saya mulai riset saya itu dimulai merangkak. Gitu. Risetnya dari mulai proceeding Bapak Ibu. Jadi tidak masalah kalau riset Bapak Ibu itu proceeding gitu. Jadi memang kita harus bergerak, yang penting bergerak gitu. Lalu 2017 juga sama, masih 16. 2019 banyak sekali proceeding saya, tapi selanjutnya 2019 saya sudah mengurangi dan sudah pindah move on ke jurnal gitu. Artikel jurnal. Nah, selanjutnya apakah yang saya lakukan selama ini? Jadi yang saya lakukan itu adalah ya saya riset ya menggunakan alat-alat yang ada di rumah. Di antaranya ini ada yang di rumah, ada yang di kampus gitu ya. Di antaranya saya memanfaatkan ini. Jadi kita tidak ada mengeluh ya. Kalau mengeluh itu ya nggak akan beres-beres gitu Bapak Ibu. Jadi kalau mengeluh itu ya cuma habiskan waktu aja, wasting time gitu ya. Jadi selanjutnya lagi. Nah ini selain daripada itu kami juga membuat di lab kami itu membuat beberapa alat ya. Beberapa alat untuk menunjang riset. Ketika alat itu tidak ada ya kita buat gitu. Prinsipnya begitu. Ketika alat itu mahal ya kita buat. Jadi kita pernah buat sunlight photoreactor, UV photoreactor juga, portable UV, juga high energy ball mill, sekarang ada disk mill juga sebelah sini. Ada juga kita buat spray drying, flame spray pyrolysis, semua ada untuk mendukung teknologi partikel gitu ya. Selanjutnya lagi, ini contohnya alat yang tadi. Nah, setiap membuat alat itu selalu ujungnya itu kita itu di lab kami itu selalu ujungnya harus ada publikasi begitu kan alat itu. Di antaranya ini ada beberapa publikasi tahun yang lama ya, ini tahun berapa ini? 2018 kita buat alat low cost Arduino based spektrofotometer yang sudah diterbitkan. Lalu selanjutnya dari sini juga kita menganalisis lebih lanjut untuk temperature expectation of spektrofotometer yang kita buat. Nah, dari sini kita bisa tahu suhu berapa itu optimumnya begitu. Selanjutnya, dari sana kita juga melakukan economic evaluasi kalau misalnya alat ini diproduksi massal gitu. Ini hanya sebagai untuk analisa ya. Jadi istilahnya ketika riset itu ya kalau misalnya tidak bisa, ini kan risetnya riset komputasi ya. Jadi kita juga melakukan komputasi dan hasil daripada komputasi ini ya mahasiswa saya juga ya, yang bersama mahasiswa saya itu kita berhasil untuk membreakdown beberapa produksi untuk memproduksi beberapa material gitu ya. Lalu selanjutnya lagi, nah ini salah satu alat yang dibuat itu adalah alat untuk sunlight photoreactor. Itu juga pada saat lagi ada partial solar eclipse ya tahun 2016. Nah ini juga kita juga coba untuk menghitung. Ternyata ini juga jadi beberapa pada saat itu jadi beberapa artikel ya. Alhamdulillah. Jadi ini itu menghitung dari partikel itu bagaimana efeknya kepada fotokatalisis gitu. Selanjutnya dari sana dari mulai kita bergerak di fotokatalisis yang ada itu ternyata itu bisa diinikan lagi, dikembangkan lagi. Jadi kita analisa jenis katalisnya seperti apa, pembuatan katalisnya seperti apa begitu. Ini menghasilkan beberapa artikel ya. Beberapa artikel yang beberapanya itu ada Q1 ya. Satu artikel ini. Jurnal. Lalu selanjutnya kita juga menguji daripada micromechanical properties daripada yang katalisnya seperti apa. Itu juga dicek. Nah, ini pengecekannya juga kita menggunakan namanya FM ya. FM dicek mekaniknya seperti apa. Nah, selanjutnya kita itu negara agriculture ya. Nah, pada saat kita berbicara negara itu negara Indonesia sebagai lahan pertanian gitu ya. Lahan pertanian itu kita breakdown dari misalnya dari padi saja. Kita kan sebagai produsen padi ya saat ini. Nah, dari padi itu produknya apa saja? Ada namanya ada rice husk, rice bran, terus udah gitu rice straw, ada root juga segala macam kita olah. Bagaimana cara mengolahnya ini melakukan komputasi untuk memproduk padi itu menjadi sumber silika dan sumber karbon. Hasil komputasi kami ini. Nah, hasil yang padi tadi itu, yang rice straw, contohnya rice straw itu kami analisa, ternyata bisa menghasilkan silika nanopartikel ya. Jadi ada silika potassium silicate, dan yang nanti potassium silicate ini akan bisa dimanfaatkan untuk sumber pupuk ya. Nah, selanjutnya juga selain daripada itu kita juga membuat submicron silika particle dari rice husk ya. Rice husknya kita olah sehingga kita analisa dengan menggunakan absorption mechanism. Nah, ini bisa jadi silikanya. Kalau tadi kan ada kaliumnya potasium tadi kan. Nah, kalau ini hanya silikanya saja. Bagaimana cara membuat silika submicron? Selanjutnya, daripada silika itu, ketika agricultural waste itu istilahnya dibakar atau dibuang, itu sebenarnya ketika dibakar itu kita itu akan berhadapan dengan namanya karbon. Nah, apakah dampaknya karbon tersebut? Ternyata karbon itu setelah diproses di burning ya, tadi rice straw itu di burning, lalu setelah itu dilakukan proses boil mill, tadi ada alatnya, kita membuat alat sendiri di boil mill. Setelah di boil mill itu kan masih ada namanya komponen-komponen inorganik. Nah, inorganik komponen ini kita bisa ambil sebenarnya di etching proses, sehingga kalau di etching proses itu nanti akan menghasilkan porous carbon particles gitu ya. Nah, porous carbon ini yang akan bisa dimanfaatkan oleh kita untuk sebagai alat, sebagai contohnya adsorben gitu. Ya, kita membuat ini. Jadi bagaimana caranya membuat karbon yang ukurannya nano sampai mikrometer. Selanjutnya juga dengan alat boilnya tersebut kita analisa, selain daripada rice straw, kita juga coba yang lain, kunyit segala macam, yang ternyata ini alat ini tuh bisa menghasilkan produk macam-macam analisanya. Dan diantaranya kami juga mendapatkan salah satu grant itu untuk membuat suplemen atlet ya dari kunyit. Nah, selain daripada itu, kita juga sekarang juga bergerak ke arah bioplastik dari mulai sintesis, mechanical properties, dan juga biodegradability dengan tim kami di riset kami. Jadi kami membuat sebuah plastik. Plastik itu diolah untuk lalu dianalisa bagaimana reaksi kimia dalam plastik tersebut. Ini baru diterima ya di material fisik mekanik. Ini selanjutnya kita mampu nggak plastik itu menumbuhkan jamur. Ternyata bioplastik itu kan syaratnya plastik itu kan harus bisa terdekomposisi secara natural ya. Nah, jadi akibatnya ini ternyata berhasil gitu. Jadi buat plastik, selain itu bagaimana caranya kita menumbuhkan jamur di plastik tersebut. Selain daripada itu juga kita melakukan analisa yang lain dari karbon yang masih turunannya daripada agriculture waste tadi. Jadi membuat karbon grafen, kita itu dari grafit jadi grafen, bagaimana caranya? Kita menggunakan exofilation process. Dan juga yang sekarang lagi yang heboh itu MOF ya sekarang ya, tentang Metal Organic Framework. Saya juga kerja di sini. Nah, Metal Organic Framework particle itu sudah ditemukan di beberapa artikel ya. Nah, ini kita buat beberapa jenis MOF, dari mulai ada misalnya TPA, ada juga yang namanya dengan menggunakan macam-macam ya. Dan ini juga kita setiap kita melakukan analisa riset, ya, analisa riset itu harus dibarengi dengan agar kita ingin memberikan ilmu sains teknologi gitu ya kepada orang lain. Analisa itu bukan hanya hasil saja. Jadi biasanya kalau di tim kami itu ada hasil produk partikel itu dibuat partikel, ada aplikasinya dan juga ada bagaimana mekanismenya, bagaimana yang terjadi seperti itu. Jadi kita buat MOF ini. Nah, ini selain daripada MOF juga salah satu tim riset kami juga mengerjakan daripada corrosion analysis. Jadi partikel-partikel yang ada itu bagaimana dampaknya untuk proses coating segala macam, sehingga bagaimana dampaknya kepada korosi juga. Ini juga sangat penting ya, Karena partikel ini seperti cat itu kan juga bisa menempel pada bagian yang korosi supaya tidak bagian yang mudah berkarat itu kan pakai teknologi partikel itu coatingnya. Nah, proses coating juga kita bergerak juga pada natural product juga, seperti contohnya kita membuat cat batik. Jadi bukan hanya cat untuk korosi, kita juga buat cat partikel batik ya. Jadi kita menganalisa ini bagaimana batik itu bisa masuk ke dalam cat batik yang alami itu, natural product itu bisa masuk ke dalam serat-serat kain. Ini dianalisa juga. Nah, untuk dalam bidang pendidikan, kami juga bergerak bagaimana caranya mengajarkan saintek kepada siswa gitu. Jadi kepada siswa, baik siswa, kami bergeraknya dua, baik ada siswanya siswa normal disebutnya ya, ada satu lagi siswa dengan kebutuhan khusus. Jadi kita menjelaskan teori-teori fenomena yang terjadi pada saat ini ada apa saja. Yang diantaranya yang teori misalnya teori bagaimana partikel itu terdilusi, bagaimana garam atau gula itu ke dalam air itu istilahnya menyebar dalam air gitu ya, difusi, dilusi begitu. Apa itu hubungan ukuran partikel besar dan kecil begitu. Lalu juga kita yang kemarin yang lagi heboh itu ada COVID, kita juga menjelaskan bagaimana teorinya kita itu bisa terkena COVID secara aerosol partikel itu during COVID, bagaimana menjelaskan pada siswa, lalu bagaimana menjelaskan konveksi, lalu bagaimana menjelaskan konsepnya Archimedes, magnetik, dan segala macam. Nah ini, dan juga termasuk tindal efek, dan juga termasuk partikel susu, segala macam. Di sini ada partikel susu. Macam. Selanjutnya lagi ya, akhir kata. Ini saya agak cepat supaya banyak pertanyaan, harapannya. Terima kasih kepada keluarga saya yang benar-benar mendukung saya, profesor saya pada saat dulu waktu di Jepang, Prof. Okuyama 9 tahun ya, saya bersama Prof. Okuyama untuk bekerja bersama beliau, dan juga tim riset kami yang ada di UPI ya, dan semua teman dan kolega di UPI, dan juga semua orang yang saya tidak bisa sebutkan satu persatu ya. Akhir kata, ini ada satu perkataan ya yang ini. Jadi istilahnya, jangan ratapkan hatimu apabila kamu ada dalam suatu keadaan. Namun jadikanlah keadaan sekarang sebagai sarana untuk maju, do your best. Do not complain, keep fighting, keep trying, and keep your spirit. Gitu. Jadi istilahnya, tidak ada istilah kalau misalnya keadaannya sekarang ini kita mengeluh, tidak ada. Jadi kita harus berjuang, ya kita harus survive. Gitu. Dan untuk siapa lagi ya, untuk kalau misalnya kita karena kita bergeraknya di bidang pendidikan ya, kita kan di university gitu ya. Ya kita harus bagaimana caranya mengarahkan mahasiswa itu agar penuh ilmu, gitu. Ilmunya banyak sehingga ketika dia nanti di dunia nyata dia siap untuk menghadapi dan siap untuk riset begitu ya. Kalau riset, kalau misalnya dia nanti di dunia kerja juga dia siap dengan ilmu-ilmu yang ada yang dia miliki gitu. Sehingga bisa menghadapi permasalahan-permasalahan di industri nanti. Nah, ya terima kasih banyak atas perhatian Bapak Ibu semua. Saya kembalikan kepada moderator.
Terima kasih kepada Bapak Asep Bayu, sangat luar biasa sekali penjelasannya Pak. Sampai kami terkagum-kagum melihatnya. Oke Bapak, kita langsung saja pada sesi tanya jawab ya Pak ya.
Iya silakan.
Oke, pertanyaan pertama, ada yang bertanya tentang kan penelitian yang Bapak lakukan itu sangat banyak sekali, oke. Untuk waktunya, berapa lama waktu yang Bapak butuhkan untuk melakukan penelitian sampai akhirnya bisa menjadi sebuah tulisan atau artikel ilmiah gitu?
Iya, satu-satu ya kalau gitu saya jawabnya ya. Jadi begini, riset itu biasanya itu 1 sampai 2 bulan ya biasanya kalau risetnya itu. Jadi dalam keadaan COVID gini memang agak susah ya kita memanage-nya gitu. Tapi ya mahasiswa saya juga tim juga luar biasa ya, masih tetap riset sampai saat ini. Jadi ya kita 1 sampai 2 bulan. Lalu kalau publikasi kalau itu tidak bisa tidak bisa namanya apa? Tidak bisa dikontrol ya. Kadang-kadang ada yang 2 tahun, ada yang setahun gitu. Gitu sih kalau ini. Tapi riset itu biasanya kita dari mulai ini biasanya mahasiswa itu kalau mahasiswa skripsi atau yang tesis gitu atau disertasi biasanya Kamu mau riset apa, lalu dia melakukan secepat-cepatnya baca paper segala macam. Biasanya baca paper tuh kalau tim di kami itu biasanya cepat bacanya tuh sehari itu bisa ya 20-an bisa baca lah itu. 20 paper udah biasa gitu itu. Jadi kita baca lalu maksimal seminggu paling 3 harian mereka udah bisa dapat conclusion mau melakukan riset apa, perbedaannya apa begitu. Nanti dari riset, nah itu dari sana baru dimulai riset, mulai runnya. Runnya biasanya sebulan 2 bulan lah ya, biasanya begitu. Tapi kalau lagi benar-benar beruntung, bisa 2 minggu bisa selesai risetnya gitu. Ya.
Mungkin tergantung jenis risetnya juga, nah Pak.
Betul ya. Tapi
mau
kalau riset pendidikan agak lama kalau riset pendidikan. Dia bisa butuh 2 bulanan. Karena riset pendidikan itu kan ada yang namanya, kalau kami itu arahnya itu ke risetnya itu riset eksperimen ya, experimental application. Nah itu biasanya kita melakukan 2 tahap kan. Pertama tahapnya teaching dulu, tahap teaching konvensional, nah itu butuh waktu. Setelah tahap teaching konvensional baru melakukan risetnya. Teaching konvensional kan ada pretest proses ya. Lalu kita tambahkan nanti dengan risetnya experimental demonstration. Nah itu bisa tambah lagi, bisa tambah semingguan 2 mingguan ya untuk gitu. Lalu terakhir ditutup dengan post test juga gitu. Kalau pendidikan memang agak 2 bulanan gitu bisa.
Oke. Berarti totalnya 1-2 bulanan lah maksimal ya Pak ya?
Ya betul.
Riset. Oke Pak, pertanyaan berikutnya. Nih, ada pertanyaan, Prof, boleh kongsi rahasia untuk beginner ingin menulis artikel yang banyak seperti Prof. Nah, dari yang bertanya, gimana rahasianya, apa tipsnya gitu Pak?
Rahasianya kalau menulis paper itu ya tulis aja gitu. Kalau menulis paper itu sebenarnya seperti ini ya, seperti namanya puzzle ya. Jadi kalau misalnya lagi mood ngerjakan metode dulu gitu. Kalau saya begitu sih. Mungkin ada beberapa cara penulisan paper itu. Ada yang caranya itu merunut dari introduction, terus method, terus research and discussion, segala macam, ditutup dengan abstrak segala macam. Kalau saya enggak. Kalau saya prinsipnya kamu kerjakan kalau ke mahasiswa ya, kamu kerjakan yang kamu suka gimana caranya. Cari tahu caranya gimana, strateginya. Yang penting kalau misalnya ini papernya beres gitu istilahnya. Tiap orang itu beda-beda, ada yang mengerjakan metode dulu, ada yang mengerjakan research discussion dulu, tapi biasanya kalau prinsip di tim kami itu ya seperti puzzle ya kadang-kadang. Jadi puzzle tuh kerjakan yang mana dulu, nanti ujungnya disusun akhir gitu. Kadang kita juga kalau membuat nulis paper juga dengan tim mahasiswa juga dibagi-bagi gitu. Kamu kerjakan introduction, kamu kerjakan metode, jadi terakhir baru disusun. Jadi seperti itu menulis itu. Jadi tidak ada aturan harus yang mana dulu gitu.
Berarti kerja tim bagus dalam penelitian ya Pak ya?
Ya, kerja tim itu yang paling penting. Makanya kalau misalnya tidak ada tim itu susah kalau sendiri. Kecuali kalau riset-riset seperti analisa matematik gitu. Saya kan ada beberapa paper yang sendirian. Itu kan analisa matematik sekali. Menurunkan rumus atau apa, itu bisa sendiri. Tapi kalau misalnya riset-riset eksperimen seperti itu ya biasanya tim kita. Jadi ketika mengerjakan kita dikeroyok gitu ya. Keroyokan, bagi-bagi bagian siapa yang menulis A, siapa yang menulis B, nanti terakhir digabung, dirapihkan gitu.
Jadi lebih banyak ide di sana jadinya ya Pak?
Betul, ya. Semakin banyak orang, semakin idenya.
Nah, jadi itu tips gimana caranya kita penulis pemula pun bisa melakukannya, berarti ya Pak ya?
Ya bisa, semuanya bisa ya.
Oke Pak, lagi ada pertanyaan dari Malaysia. Salam dari Malaysia, Prof. Selamat atas kecemerlangannya. Saya juga mau tahu teknik menulis yang mantap untuk artikel supaya dapat diterima di jurnal Scopus. Nah, jurnal Scopus lagi nih Pak. Ada tips and triknya Pak?
Tips and triknya ya segala macam hal itu, baik itu berhasil atau tidak. Jadi begini, banyak orang berpikir bahwa kalau riset itu harus berhasil gitu ya, harus sukses. Itu tidak seperti itu. Jadi yang namanya riset itu kadang kalau tidak sukses juga bagus juga hasilnya gitu.
Yeah.
Jadi apa yang menjadi poinnya? Poinnya itu adalah bagaimana cara kita mengeluarkan yang namanya originality gitu. Misalnya begini, contohnya saja, misalnya ada hukum Newton. Hukum Newton itu lagi duduk di pinggir di bawah pohon ya, di bawah pohon, terus ada pohon apel kan, apelnya jatuh kan. Nah, apelnya jatuh, lalu dia menurunkan rumus hukum Newton. Nah, kalau apakah kita bisa menulis kalau misalnya jatuhnya itu adalah jeruk gitu? Bisa saja gitu. Jeruk itu orange ya, bisa saja. Nah, tinggal kita mengemukakan bagaimana caranya menulis bahwa kita itu berbeda dengan yang sebelumnya. Jadi dia novelty-nya ya. Dia menggunakan apple, kita menggunakan orange gitu kan. Nah, seperti itu. Ya.
Oke.
Jadi
berarti kita harus jelaskan apa sih beda kita meneliti dengan penelitian-penelitian yang sudah ada sebelumnya gitu. Itu yang paling penting di Scopus ya Pak ya. Kemudian Pak, ada pertanyaan dari Ibu Dr. Sarifah. Beliau bertanya, good morning. Could you give us some more details about how writing fast and impact in the field? Bagaimana, bisa nggak Bapak sharing ke kita bagaimana lebih detail mengenai cara menulis cepat dan lebih terlihat dampaknya di lapangan gitu Pak?
Cara menulis cepat ya, kalau cara menulis cepat itu ya mungkin dikerjakan bersama-sama itu ya, kalau ingin lebih cepat gitu. Jadi student itu jadi ada beberapa lecturer gitu ya, itu hanya student yang mengerjakannya begitu. Jadi lama dia kalau begitu, kalau student mengerjakannya. Tapi kalau dikerjakan bersama-sama itu akan lebih cepat. Jadi siapa yang mengerjakan apa itu jadi itu sangat, dan itu energi kita jadi lebih cepat gitu daripada hanya kita duduk manis mendapatkan hasil produk itu lama itu sudah lama, tapi kita harus kerjanya itu bersama-sama gitu. Jadi di situ yang namanya co-author dalam paper itu seperti itu. Iya.
Ya Pak, di sini ada Bu Sarifah.
Cara menulis cepatnya seperti itu.
Mungkin beliau ingin bertanya langsung, silakan Ibu.
Oh ya, silakan. Ya Bu, silakan.
Ya, saya nampak Dr. Bayu banyak dari segi citation. So I need to some tips. So bekerja bersama-sama kan, as a team untuk publication. So good. Some of idea, and then maybe I'm from polytechnics, so student from diploma, so just connected friend, and then sometimes kita perlukan satu team yang bagus lah untuk sama-sama develop tu. So congratulations Doktor.
Ya, terima kasih.
Oke, terima kasih pada Ibu. Nah, sepertinya yang membatasi kita lagi-lagi waktu ini, Pak. Mungkin masih ada pertanyaan, tapi mungkin kita tunda dulu di pertemuan berikutnya.
Kalau ada pertanyaan singkat, boleh juga sebentar. Boleh yang
singkat, Mas, hampir sama kalau pertanyaan singkatnya dengan Bu Sarifah tadi, tips. Karena mungkin peserta lihat sangat banyak sekali tulisan Bapak Bayu. Kenapa bisa nulis sebanyak itu dalam 1 tahun berapa artikel gitu. Tipsnya tadi juga Pak. Mungkin ada closing statement-nya Pak untuk para peserta kita yang mau menulis.
Yang mau menulis yaitu, jadi kebanyakan banyak orang itu kalau misalnya mau riset itu yang saya beberapa teman saya dari luar negeri gitu ya, dari abroad kan, after graduation kembali ke Indonesia. Ketika kembali ke Indonesia, dia mengeluh banyaknya itu. Mengeluh keadaan Indonesia seperti apa, begitu kan. Tidak ada equipment, tidak ada apa-apa kan. Nah, itu kita tidak boleh seperti itu. Tapi kita jadikan yang lingkungan kita itu, yang kita gunakan lingkungan kita yang ada gitu. Jadi keep fighting aja gitu. Kita tetap semangat, bagaimana caranya untuk survive gitu kan, untuk riset gitu. Dan juga niatnya riset itu istilahnya yaitu kita ingin memberikan ilmu kepada student gitu, kepada mahasiswa. Jadi kalau mahasiswa itu menulis dia itu kalau ada book publication itu mahasiswa itu akan jadi akan lebih kita memberikan semangat dia untuk dapat seperti bisa dapat scholarship kan begitu kan, bisa dapat good job yang selanjutnya gitu. Nah itu kalau kita niatnya seperti itu aja niatnya. Jadi niatnya jangan putus asa gitu. Jadi apapun juga bisa ditulis itu istilahnya, tidak masalah gitu.
Iya. Dan tidak menutup kemungkinan riset yang kita lakukan ini juga bermanfaat untuk masyarakat banyak ya Pak ya.
Betul ya. Dan juga siapa tahu kita lagi menulis sejarah. Jadi para peraih Nobel itu istilahnya mendapatkan Nobel itu dari riset-riset yang simple gitu sebetulnya. Nah, siapa tahu tulisan kita itu nanti akan mengarahkan kita ke sana, kita tidak tahu gitu. Jadi daripada kita diam ya kita kerjakan apa yang kita bisa lakukan.
Betul sekali. Saya ucapkan terima kasih sekali lagi kepada Bapak Asep Bayu Nandianto. Luar biasa sekali materi yang telah Bapak sampaikan dan telah bagikan kepada kami. Mungkin kita akhiri saja Pak untuk materi kita ya pada kali ini. Kita akan lanjutkan dengan parallel session, dan sebelumnya saya ucapkan terima kasih. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Kita kembalikan pada MC kita Ibu Efni Ceria. Pada Ibu disilahkan.
Thank you, Prof. Asep and Ms. Zola. We are very fortunate to be able to gain insight and discuss with Prof. Asep, the brilliant professor, young and high achievement. Hopefully we can catch his spirit of achievement. Let me give the highest appreciation to Prof. Asep and Ms. Zola. Right? Ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to the third panel session, we please to all authors to join in parallel session 1. For the Zoom meeting room, please see the conference website and or in chat column, Zoom column. For the third plenary, we will start at 2 p.m. So please join in parallel session room. You can see in Zoom webinar chat, and see you on 2 p.m. and this afternoon.
Asep, terima kasih.
Terima kasih banyak Pak.
Prof, terima kasih banyak Prof.
Terima kasih. Sampai jumpa lagi.
Insya Allah.
Ya.
Ditunggu alamatnya Prof.
Oh iya.
Pengiriman.
Prof. Asep, because Mr. Dr. Ifdil have with us, join with us, I think it's okay for us to take photo session. Please for Dr. Harwati, Ms. Nilma Zola, to active your video. Give the best smile up there. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Terima kasih Bapak Ibu semua.
Terima kasih. Jumpa di paralel sesi.